All right, this is I'm live. I hope I am. Let's see. Cool. Looks like that's working. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. This is something that I do occasionally when the time permits and I have the need for it. I last did a live, I think sometime last year, and I know that it takes a lot of practice to get into this. So if I screw this up, please let me know. If you can hear me, if the audio is not great, please let me know as well. This is something that I decided to do today. So please just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, if the audio is good and everything is looking just all right. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Thanks for joining the live, of course. This particular one is really set out for those that have subscribed to the channel over time. I know a lot of you have subscribed recently, and I try to do these lives just so that I connect with you, get your questions answered. A lot of times there are tons of comments I get on this. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate that. And if you don't mind, thank you so much, guys. Thank you. If you don't mind, just share where you're from. Country is fine. Just so that I have an idea of the people I'm talking to, and maybe there's any information we can discuss based on where you're from. As you know, a lot of the programs I talk about are generally restricted to certain regions, and that's because that's just how it is nowadays with aviation. Most of the programs are often focused on a particular region, country, and status in terms of immigration status. So I've gotten a lot of questions from a lot of people that they ask me, I should talk about a program at a certain country, and I'm sometimes I don't have all the necessary information to talk about these programs. So you just have to bear with me. I see Iran. Thanks for joining as well. Nim, thanks for that. So the main purpose of this is, of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I will try to answer those questions for you to the best of my abilities. Of course, if I do not know the answer to the question, I will tell you, hey, that is a question I can't really answer. But my goal is to hopefully give you the necessary information you need to achieve your goals. I know that aviation, becoming a pilot, is a dream for most of you guys and girls that are following this channel. So my goal is to hopefully give you that information and help you achieve your goals. All right. Drums, I appreciate all of your videos and advices. That's great. Thank you for joining as well. Thanks for leaving that feedback. It goes a long way. I see Meet from India. Thanks for joining. I do have a lot of people from India. I know I often get a lot of people from what other country is that? Of course, Africa as well, in terms of the region, Asia, Africa, and of course Europe and some America as well. But it's great to have you guys. So the thing is, a lot of you will leave comments on my videos, and I appreciate those comments. You guys will ask questions about qualifications, requirements, and just some guidance. And in reality, sometimes I get a lot of comments that it's hard for me to catch up. You have to understand that, I also work. So when I'm off, I'm either trying to rest or trying to catch up on things, or maybe even making a video for you guys, right? So when I spend that time trying to respond to comments, then I won't be productive, if that makes sense. Not that I'm disregarding your comments or I'm ignoring you. I want you to know that from a place of gratitude and just humbleness, I appreciate all those comments, all those likes. I truly do. The reasons why I sometimes don't respond is not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because there are tons of comments or questions, and taking that time to respond means that I also cannot bring the productive or educational videos or topics to you guys. You have to understand that making those videos sometimes take some research. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just, conversational, or maybe something that I just I'm pretty knowledgeable about. But sometimes it's something I have to research because, maybe it's been a while I've talked about a topic, or maybe it's just something that I haven't looked at or seen in a while. So I try to just do that research, spend that time to do that. And that means I am spending time that I should be connecting with you, I'm using it to do that as well. So like today, I was like, you know what? Let's do a Q&A where I respond to your questions and answer your questions for those of you who come on to this live, of course. So somebody asked, Meet, how am I doing? Well, I am doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you doing, right? How are you? Hope you're having a great day. Hope life is treating you well, right? Hope you are well. Those things are important. I know that we're often so focused on achieving this goal of flying and achieving, this dream of becoming a pilot. And I know that's why most of you have subscribed to the channel. But at the end of the day, we still have to take care of ourselves first, right? Look after your mental health, look after your health, look after your physical being, right? And then you can pursue other things. You have to take care of the basic needs, right? So I am doing well. Thanks for asking. What's your advice from Z for the next? Actually, I plan to do something. Let me just copy this so that people can see. This is interesting. Just a second, guys. Right, it's actually making it white. Okay, so this is something that I'm gonna have to figure out. I'm trying to pin, let me do this. I'm gonna pin the message. Okay, and I need to fix something real quick, guys. That's not what I want. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it, but so that way I can actually just highlight the comments or the question I'm actually trying to answer specifically. So this particular question from Z, what's your advice for the next round of Speedbird in terms of the Skyborn interviews? I'm still waiting to hear back after my group exercise, but I'm not sure what to expect for interviews. Great. So when it comes to the interviews, one of the key things I would say is that I know you've done your group exercise and the other assessments that you have to do. But for the interviews, generally speaking, from experience, it's often focused on the motivation and just what your experiences and how you narrate your experiences in terms of the competencies. And I think if you've watched my videos, I often get on competencies and really instilling that into those who watched my videos, because those are key things that any airline would ask for, right, or would test for. So when it comes to the flight school assessment, all right, one of the areas that they really focus on would be, of course, they might ask you, okay, you have to understand that this can always change, but they can often ask you questions lines of, why are you choosing Skyborn over FTE, right? Or why did you apply to the program? Questions like that are things that you should be well prepared for. But in addition to that, you should also be prepared for questions in the lines of, how have you handled challenges in the past? What do you know about the BA program? All right, the BA Speedbird program. How would you handle challenges in training? Questions in that line, right? And I keep going. I can keep going on. But the point here is, you have to do your own research. Do your research about the flight school. Know about their programs. If you have friends, maybe those are people who can tell you some insight about the program and what to expect. Because the key thing is that they want to see that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Now, it's funny, right? I have a lot of notes here, even though this isn't for this live particularly, but this is just me when I'm doing my own I guess reading. When it comes to these interviews, it is key that you're able to show your human skills, right? In as much as you want to be a pilot, they want to see that you are a good person. And when I say good person, somebody who they would like to fly with. Now, the people that are interviewing you may not be pilots, and they may be pilots. It depends, right? They may have qualifications to fly, and they may actually fly. It all depends. But the important thing is that you want to be as human as possible, which means that you can connect with these people. You always think about it this way. If you are on the other side, assuming you are an interviewer and you are assessing someone, what would you want the person to look like in the sense, in terms of their competencies, in terms of how they talk, in terms of how they carry themselves, especially when it comes to aviation, right? So, without spending too much time on that, the key thing is spend some time being able to describe your motivation and what got you interested in flying. Spend some time on why you've chosen this particular school over the other. Be very familiar with the school structure and the programs they offer. Be very familiar with the BA program itself and what you can expect as you assuming you get selected, what you can expect in training and how you would handle challenges. And honestly, for the flight school stage, I would say from experience, it's a lot easier than the final stage, of course, right? The final stage is where everything becomes really important at the final stage, when it comes to preparation, right? But for the flight school stage, I believe that they really want to connect with you. They really want to see that you know what you're getting yourself into. They really want to see that you know your stuff, all right? And you know about those competencies that we often talk about every time. So do your research, be able to narrate your experiences using the STAR model, be able to show that you're confident in who you are. That's where I'm going to leave that, all right? But great question. Thanks for asking that, Z. All right, Azad, moving on to the next one here. Stephen, I hope you well. Thank you for saying that. You've been a fantastic supporter during my first year round of the 3 UK scholarships. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Talking about scholarships, I have to actually say this. I don't think this person is on. I don't want to mention names now, but if you're on, I don't think she's on. But the point here is somebody just messaged me on Instagram, and I'm just going to read it, all right? Talking about scholarships. And these are the things that really makes me happy, all right? You guys won't be able to see it, all right? I'm just trying to cover the person's name, but that is the message, all right? Sent me a screenshot, by the way. And the person says, whoop, whoop, all right? I mean, like, congratulations, right? And the person got a message from one of the programs they applied to stating congratulations and that they've been awarded the scholarship, all right? And they're getting a contract, and I don't want to read it, right? But the point here is I just got that. And I am glad to say, that they did the work. My goal here, or my job really, is to just bring the light, right? Bring your attention to the important things, the trends that I've seen in the industry, the knowledge that I've acquired over time, and the experiences I've acquired. That is really my duty here. I'm an instructor, all right? I'm a flight instructor and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you can take a horse to the river. Like this, it's a saying, right? You can take a horse to the river, but you can't force the horse to drink out of the river. So the same applies here. I can tell you all these things, but if you don't apply it, or if you don't apply it well, then the results may not pan out to be what you want. But my goal is that I can break this information down. I can repeat it enough times so that it becomes ingrained in you, and that way you can perform well, whether it's an application to a scholarship program, whether it's a cadet program, whether it's an interview for an airline job, whatever that may be. The goal is to be able to help you achieve your own dreams. I had support along the way as well. Granted, it costs money. If you know, you know. Anything in aviation is expensive. It takes time and commitment from people. And of course, when you find the right sources, pay for it, right? Because it could help you. That is the truth about it. So yeah, talking about that, that's it says, thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. I appreciate you letting me know. Okay. And that's honestly why I do this live as well, because you get to see what other people are saying. And I think it helps to just promote the right stuff. All right. All right. Next one here. So there is no any other career program or sponsorship for Iranian citizens to become airline pilot. This is from Drums, and this is a great question. I get this every time. This particular one that I highlighted. The thing is that when it comes to becoming a pilot, right, with this through these career programs, you have to be in a place that offers those programs. Unfortunately, a lot of countries do not have these programs. In fact, I'm originally from Nigeria, right? And none of those programs exist over there, even in Africa at this point. In the Middle East, same thing. I have not seen many cadet programs as well out of there. I know India does offer some cadet programs, but you have to pay. I know that, of course, Europe, they do have a lot of programs out there. United States have a lot of programs out there, but Middle East, Eastern region, Iran, and on countries in that region anyway, I hope I haven't seen any cadet program out of there. That is the honest truth. All right. How can one become a cargo pilot? Avalanche. That's a great question. Now, there's no special requirement to become a cargo pilot, honestly. But one thing I would say is that depending on the country you're in, depending on the airline also, they may have different requirements. So becoming a cargo pilot can often be somewhat of an entry level job, depending on the airline, and it could also be one of the top depending on the airline you work for, that might be one of the top places you can get to as well. In the United States, right, you have FedEx and UPS as one of the two top leading cargo companies you can work for in terms of just operations and what they offer. But they're also great. There's so many other great companies in the US as well. Now, in other parts of the world, from what I've gathered, apart from maybe DHL, there's Lux Air Cargo as well. Most cargo companies are generally smaller, which means their requirements and maybe the benefits they offer and the pay may not be as competitive as what you may get with established cargo companies like DHL, FedEx, UPS, and the likes. So the advice is get experience, as much experience as you can. If your goal is to become a cargo pilot, all right, or if you want to fly for a cargo company, all right, get as much experience as you can. That's the best advice I can give you. But there's nothing special that you have to do when it comes to your actual training. Let's see. I think I've answered that question. Next one here. I've got my ego test group exercise for BA next week. Do you have any advice, please? It's Gondal. Well, you're doing the right stuff by getting all these preps, but remember that the actual assessment itself can be quite stressful, and that is designed with the purpose of testing you to your abilities. I see how you manage workload, see how you multitask, see how you can make decisions, and how quickly you can make decisions. So my advice to you is don't over practice whatever you are practicing with. I see you're using Sky Test. That's fine. But don't over practice it. Don't become too focused on that program, because what happens is a lot of people end up going for the actual thing and they come out saying, well, it didn't seem like the actual thing. They can't even tell if it helped them. So you have to be flexible in the sense being able to adapt to what you are presented with. If you go in there expecting it to be exactly the same, you will be disappointed. The other thing that a lot of people will struggle with is the mental math aspect of things, where you're multitasking and then you have to do this mental math. And I'll be honest with you, I've taken some of those tests myself. They are kind of, they trip you up, right? Because you're working in between numbers like 13,570, and then you have to calculate, your rate of climb to, maybe 16,700, right? Those odd, weird numbers can be hard to do quick mental calculations. quick mental calculations for, while also maintaining awareness of the changing parameters. So my advice to you is don't get too focused on expecting the same program to function the same way. Be ready to adapt to what you're given. That is what I can say. But it's good to be familiar, right, with information. It's good to practice with something, just so that you're not in the blind, right? But don't be wrapped up with that particular program. Be very flexible. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say on that. Guys, let's show some support. Like and sub. I appreciate it, Ali. Thank you very much. Thanks for saying that. Please, I appreciate that. I appreciate the likes. Please don't forget to drop a like on it. It goes a long way. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel. I appreciate that as well. Hey, how are you? I'm doing well. Third, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I'm just gonna call it third. Hey, how are you? What are the cadet program apart from Indian Airlines which are available to international students from India? Great. All right. This is similar to what I've answered earlier. Most programs right now are only focused on the people within the country that program originates, right? So, for example, a big one is the Speedbird Pilot program. You have to have the right to live and work in the UK, right? You have the ones that maybe Lux Air. You have the right. You have to have the right to live and work in EU, and it goes on like that. Unfortunately, at this point, I do not know of any program that accepts international students. That is the short answer to that. I do not know of any international. Now, I know there was one from Emirates, right? They used to take on international students, but now they've stopped that. Well, it's not been ran in like how many years now? 5-6 years now. So we don't know if that will ever come back. They do run the one that is open to people that are from Emirates or Emiratis, if that's how it's said. People that were born in that region. They do have a program for those people. But if you're a foreigner or you're an international student, then you can't apply to those programs at this point. And I actually wanted to make a video on this topic. I guess, did I make a video? I don't think I did. But I was going to make a video on this because I get this question every time. And honestly, I always say this every time. It breaks my heart because I feel like I wish all countries do have their own cadet programs. I understand why it's restricted to people from that region, because it's only fair to focus on people from your region. It would be nice to have cadet programs that will sponsor people from India. It would be nice to have cadet programs that would sponsor people from Nigeria, Africa region, or people from, that will cover the training like the Speedbird program, because honestly, I feel like that's one of the best ones out there. Of course, there's the Aer Lingus program as well, that is fully sponsored, but the point here is having a fully sponsored program, is the best, and those programs are restricted to people from those regions. So I hope that's not a long-winded answer. Thank you very much, Steven. You've been a great help during my Speedbird application. Awesome. Thank you so much, Z. I appreciate that. Neem, tell us about the corporate aviation. How can I involve with the corporate aviation? Great. Now, when it comes to corporate aviation, a lot of times, depending on the size of the organization, you are likely not going to see any job opening posted anywhere, unless it's like Coca-Cola, for example. They may post their positions that they need a first officer on the G550 or whatever airplane they fly. But when it comes to maybe an organization that only has maybe 2 airplanes, maybe 1 airplane, maybe 3 airplanes, right? Somewhere in that range, these companies are generally, they only hire people that are referred by their senior management or their senior pilots or experienced pilots in that airline, majority of the time. Now, some organizations may still do the right thing by posting that opening up for the public, but majority of the time they don't. All right, so that is because they're so small that every pilot would only refer, or the management would prefer that their most experienced pilots refer people they know are great pilots to work for the organization. Now, this may seem a little bit unfair, but that is also important, because by the time you think about the process of screening 10 applicants, devoting people to interview them, devoting the small, mind you, this is a small organization, right? I'm talking about an organization that has maybe 2 airplanes, 3 airplanes, all right? Yes, those jobs can be very secure if you get them, and they might pay you well. But the point here is, by the time they try to devote 3 of their employees or pilots and then some HR people to interview maybe 10 applicants or maybe 15 applicants to then narrow it down to just 1 person that they need to hire, or maybe 2 people, guess what? That's a lot of expense that is not accounted for in terms of their daily operations. They are not like a regular airline that hires people on a regular basis and they have a specific department that does that. When it comes to small corporate organizations, it's mostly run with they run them lean, right? If that makes sense. They run them pretty small and pretty efficient. So if you want to work with those type of organizations, the first thing I would say is to network, right? You have to network with people in that industry. Get to know them, get experience, all right? Because sometimes, depending on the type of airplane you want to fly, having some experience on that airplane can help. That means you already have your training, or you have the type rating on it, or you have some experience on it. Those things can definitely help your application. But what I think helps you the most, or what helps you more, would be knowing the right people. And that is where networking comes in. So if you want to work for, let's say, Coca-Cola, for example, then you probably want to show up to their events that they organize, their job events, and try to ask them about their corporate aviation, like what are the opportunities there. If you want to work for what other companies out there that I know has a big aviation corporate department, there's so many of them, like all these big corporations in the world. Just try to show up to their event and ask about their aviation department, see what opportunities, and ask them about the opportunities they offer. What are the experience requirements they would look into? Because sometimes, again, some of these organizations do not really put out to the requirements out there. You don't know if it's, do I need 2,000 hours? Do I need 15,000 hours? You don't know. So by showing up to those places and talking to them can give you some insight on what is required. Okay. Hope that it wasn't too long. I hope that makes sense as well. Actually, I didn't scroll up. Sorry. All right. From Drums, I've been thinking about starting in South Africa because the valid license and low cost and easy visa process special for Iranian citizens after trying to do flight instructor to continue. Yeah, that is definitely something you can do for Drums. All right. If you can afford the training, the best thing I can tell you is just go ahead and get your training done. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people often want to wait to come to the US, or often want to go to the EU region to train. And if you can do that, sure, absolutely do it, right? But if you're in a position where it's gonna save you time and money, all right, to go to maybe South Africa, right, for example, then go for it. The time you're spending waiting for the visa, because I'll be honest with you, I went through the visa process. It's going to be quite difficult to get a visa to some of these countries like the US or to some places in EU, right? So what I would say is that if you are in a position where you have your funds ready and you're just trying to get into a school, maybe in the US, EU, and South Africa, for example, apply to all the schools that you can. I mean, that's what I did. I applied to schools in the EU, in Europe. I applied to schools in America. I applied to schools in South Africa. All right. And then, of course, when I went for the interview for the US embassy, this was a while ago now, US interview, I was able to get it, right? But the point here is I wasn't waiting for that particular one of getting into a US school to start training. I was willing to go anywhere to get started, because time is on your side, especially if you're young and all that. You don't want to spend too much time waiting for a particular visa. Some people get denied over and over and over again, and that's not what you want for yourself. All right, that's not what I want for you either. You don't want to waste time, especially when the money is sitting. If the money is sitting, you want to take advantage of it, let's put it that way, and get it to start, to work towards your dreams. Because what happens is, a lot of people, I've seen this, right? This is called the analysis paralysis, where people want to start their training and then they start to analyze this flight school, that flight school, this other flight school, and then guess what? you're trying to find the best flight school. Guess what? There's no best flight school. Every flight school has its own issues. Some are too big that you are not noticed. Some are too small that then you don't have enough airplanes to go around. You just have to kind of find what works for you, right? You have to find a school that works for you, that meets your requirement in terms of the big things, whether it's cost, whether it's location, whether it's weather, right? Those factors are things that you should consider. And if it ticks those boxes, the rest, honestly, in my opinion, is on you. Talking about flight schools, all right? I saw the article recently about United being sued by some students. This is in the US, of course. Being sued by students because they believe that they were scammed or something like that. And I always take those type of headlines with a grain of salt, because a lot of schools will promise to deliver what you came there for. So which is, I want to become a pilot. Sure, we're going to train you to become a commercial pilot. Here's what you need to pay. Here's what you need to do, blah, 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 right? But guess what? When they start training you, if you are not catching on to what you're supposed to do, or the phases of the stages you're supposed to attain at a particular time, they have the right to also terminate the training. So when people come, and don't get me wrong, I know there might be some legitimate reasons, for some people to try to sue United and the other flight school. I think was it ATP? I can't remember now. But the point here is you have to be very careful, because the school is not going to, make magic happen, right? You have to be able to do these things, whether it's the maneuvers, whether it's the knowledge aspect. You have to be able to pass your exams, pass your state checks, pass your check rides. All that is really on you. It's not on the school. So if you show up to a place and you believe that they're just going to make magic happen, well, it's not going to happen that way, right? And yes, you might have paid money, and yes, you might have spent money. What do you want to do, right? The school they promise you they will get you there, but how you get there, they will lay it out for you. But if you will get there, lies on you, right? Because if you don't do the work, just like exactly what I started with, my duty here, and that is the duty of any instructor. The duty of any instructor is to pass on this experience, the knowledge, and education in a way that it would enlighten the person that knows nothing about aviation, or for some of you that are trying to get into aviation, get scholarships. A lot of you may not have a clue about, what is necessary. Some of you are hearing pilot competencies for the first time. So if you didn't find the channel, or you didn't apply the things that I talk about, guess what? When you apply to these things, you don't get selected. And then you're wondering, oh yeah, I did all these things, but I didn't get selected because you didn't do the right things. That's why you didn't get selected. If you do the right thing, you get selected. Like I just shared, somebody shared a screenshot of the scholarship award that they were offered, right? The person did the right things, ticked the boxes, and they were offered the scholarship, all right? And that's just how it works. Now, that is not to say that you can improve, right? That is not to say that there won't be times that you'd experience challenges, right? That's not what I'm saying. There'll be challenges, there'll be setbacks, there'll be some difficulties you experience during training. Those things are normal, and those are bound to happen. But your ability to, get back up and try again and overcome those challenges, honestly, lies on you. And I have been in a situation where I've seen people struggle, especially this. I'm talking about like at the flight school now, where I'm training people, and they struggle, and you realize that in as much as you can do everything, some people may not want to put in the work, and that is where motivation comes in. And that's why most of these cadet programs, right, they always ask you about your motivation, why you want to be a pilot, what inspired you, what would you do when you experience challenges, things like that, right? Because now, of course, let's talk about your competences, right? Some people may struggle with numbers, right? Some people may struggle with just the skill of flying, right? This rudder, stick and rudder skills. Some people may struggle with that, but practice helps to improve some of those things, okay, over time. Now, the problem is that when it comes to the knowledge aspect of things, especially when you don't show up prepared, what can an instructor do? as an instructor, I can try to teach you how to do maneuvers. I can break it down to you. We can try to practice chair flying, take you to a simulator, practice even some more, then take you in the air, practice some more, right? We can try to do that, because it's not something that comes naturally to anybody, right? Nobody came out of their mom's body knowing how to fly, right? Everybody had to learn it. But what is difficult sometimes to instill in people is the discipline of studying and reading and doing the things that is required, in order for you to excel. So all that to say that if you have the ability to start your training, okay, back to this question, all right, get it started with, don't waste time while you can, all right. To continue 1500 for airline and ATPL. So what are you thinking? I'm not sure I understand that part of that question, Drums. But in the US, you need 1500 hours to get your ATPL, right? So I don't know if that's exactly where you're going with the question. But yeah, if I instructed till I got my 1500 hours, if that makes sense. Okay. So, close to 1500 hours. All right, let's say ready. Let's say I'm an SFO flying 737. Will a cargo operator like DHL, FedEx will pay for that? Absolutely. Ready. I hope you're still here. Sorry, I was kind of talking, and sometimes the goal here is, hey, I hope you guys are finding value in this. I hope it's educational. I hope it's informative. The goal is to give you this information in such a way that you can walk away feeling like you've learned something, right? And I know that when I try to answer these questions for you guys, a lot of you will learn from each other, right? And that's the great thing about this type of sessions or streams. However, sometimes I wish it's more interactive, right? Where I can actually talk to you and you can respond and we can go back and forth. That is something that I often look forward to. But unfortunately, YouTube doesn't provide that just yet. But yeah, they will train you, right? That's the thing. Yeah, if you fly 737, whatever airplane you fly, they will always train you. Okay. Mark Baker, hey Steven, thanks for the advice for Speedbird. Made it to the Skyborne Aeon assessment, but unfortunately got rejected at that point. Do you think I will get feedback if I request it? Absolutely. Try to request. So one thing I've noticed these days or recently is that they haven't been providing feedback from what I've gathered. But I would say you should try. Okay. Try to request that feedback because you just never know. Maybe they'll give it to you. All right. I'm sorry that you didn't get through. If I'm going to guess, most people had problems with I've forgotten. Is it the wings assessment? I've forgotten what that program is called now. We have to fly through the boxes, and no, I know a lot of people struggled with that, and some people actually said that they believe that they didn't get enough time, or they weren't given enough time to actually do that exercise. I don't know if that was your experience as well. Of course, I do not know anything about how these programs are, organized or run, or I have no idea. But the point here is, do not give up, right? And I know that Mark, I know we've been on this. Maybe this is the second time now, if I remember correctly. But just don't give up, right? Sometimes it takes that grit, okay, and the tenacity to achieve something, and just keep doing the right things, right? If you're going to wait for the next program or next assessment, make sure you are. You are in the books, right? Whether it's practicing those things, whether it's studying those things, it would help you, right? So that's all I can say. Third, thanks for the information. What are the scholarships awarded to international students in US or Europe? So when it comes to scholarships, right? Third, one of the things I would say is that most scholarships that are open to international students. Now, just to be clear, I'm not talking about cadet programs right now. I'm not talking about pilot cadet programs. I'm talking about scholarships. Okay. Some scholarships are open to international students. However, they often require that you are in the US, especially the US anyway. Most of the scholarship programs that I know of require that you are in the US to apply, even though you may be an international student when it comes to your visa or immigration status. You cannot be in a foreign country and apply for a scholarship and get it. again, that makes sense. Think about it, right? If you're in a foreign country and you apply to a scholarship and you win it, right, or you got awarded, and they send you the money, there's no reason for you to come back or to come. That's just how it works, right? So at the end of the day, they want to make sure that whatever program you apply to, they generally would want you to actually give the school information that you're in. So if you're in a school, then they send the money to the school. So a few programs that I talk about, OBAP is one. I know that it's open to international students, but you have to be in the state and you have to be a member. There's the EAA scholarship as well, but you have to be in the States or Canada, but you need to be a member as well. And there's tons of other scholarships programs as well, but at the end of the day, you have to be in the States. I can't even start listing. If you go and just a Google search, you see a lot of these scholarships, but they often require that you're in the States. So if you're not in the States, you're kind of out of the opportunity. Okay. When it comes to finding scholarship programs, I always say that the best thing you can do is to find scholarship programs in your country. I know it might be hard. I know it may not exist, but that's just the best way you can get these things. All right. Thanks for the information. What are the scholarship programs? I think I already answered that. Also, please provide information on how to convert FAA license to EASA and vice versa. Right. So, third, just to answer this question, this is an area that I haven't done it personally, but I know a lot of people who do this. All right, who they come to to train in the US, right, and then after getting their training done, some of them will become instructors to get some hours because they need to be competitive in the EU region to fly. You generally, at least a lot of the guys and girls that I've seen, they try to get about 500 hours, right, before going back. Okay, so when they go back, before they go back, of course, they will start preparing for their, what do you call that thing again? Their written tests, all right, the exams for the ATPL. I think it's 15 exams that you have to take, right? So they start to prepare for that before they go back. And the goal is that when they go back, they take those tests. Once they pass those tests, then they go to a flight school out there to do the practical assessment. And really, that's how it's done. Now, to give you exact step by step, I don't have that information, right? But what I know is that if you were to come to the States, let's assume you're from the EU region, you come to the United States to train, you get your hours. Some of them, to be competitive when you go back, you come over to you get generally at least 500 hours. I see Zokpar, some airlines only require 500 hours in total in Australia, if I get my that's correct. Okay, so some airlines generally, like this from Australia, as just mentioned, 500 hours, but in EU I know some people will try to get 750, 500, 750, maybe 1,000, depending on how many hours they can add, as much as they can get. That's the goal here, right? And then they prepare for their ATPL exams while they're still instructing, right? And they go back, take those exams. Once they knock out those exams, they then go to a school out there with an examiner, fly, maybe with an instructor initially, to fly to get current on the type of airplane they're going to do their check ride on. Then they do the check ride and the examiner issues them their EASA certificate. That is usually how that goes. Now, converting to FAA, it's kind of similar, right? You have to take the written test. So if you have a commercial pilot from EASA region, you have to take the written test for the US as well, commercial pilot. Make sure you meet all the requirements in terms of the hour requirements. And what else again? Yeah, and then of course you take a practical, a knowledge test with an examiner, and then of course you do not knowledge test. The oral exam and a practical exam as well with an examiner. So it's quite similar. Of course, there's maybe some more details that I've missed in this. Just keep that in mind, all right? Because I haven't done it personally, but I know a lot of people who have done this. All right, let's see. What did I miss? Okay, that's the one I just answered. All right. Yes, I heard L3 Airways in the UK has shut down. They are not accepting any new UK pilot applications for ATPL. Man, that's interesting. All right. This one here. I'm Egyptian. I can't find any cadet program for Egyptian. Can you recommend for me any country that offer pilot for Egyptian? That's the same thing as well. I honestly do not know of. I know there's Egypt Air, but I don't think they have a cadet program, right? And I do not know of any program you can apply to at this point. I'll be honest. I've covered this earlier. A lot of people ask, they're from a certain country, they need a career program they can apply to, and honestly, it's quite difficult. All right, because all these countries do not have programs. Let me check something. All right, I know I've seen this Egypt Air train, but I don't know if they offer. I'm just checking this. Let me go back to Egypt Air Cadet program. Just a second, guys. See. Yeah, I was saying I knew that but I don't know if this is a program. If this is a program that that is open to people at this point. I can pull it up, but let me show you what I'm looking at right now. See if I can find this. All right, now this is an information from Florida Flyers International Airline Pilot Career Training Center. I don't know about the school, just so you know, but they have something on Egypt Air Cadet Pilot Program. All right. But I don't know how recent this is. I'll be honest. All right, I haven't seen much about Egypt Air program being opened recently. But it does have some requirements. Let's see, you have to be between 18 and 30. But I don't know if it's fully sponsored though, Understanding the cost of the Egypt Air Cadet Pilot Program is key to planning your aviation career. Here's a breakdown. All right, tuition fees. Training costs vary, but typically include ground school 10 to 15, flight hours. I don't know if you guys can see that. Flight hours between 50,000, 70,000, depending on the number of hours required. Licensing exams around 2,000, 5,000 for certification tests and licenses. So yeah, this is, let's see, there's a scholarship section here. It says Egypt Air and related organizations occasionally offer scholarships for eligible cadets. These opportunities may cover pressure or full tuition and are typically merit-based or tied to future employment agreements. Research early and apply promptly to take advantage of financial aid options. So I don't know. I'll be honest with you, I don't know about this one, but yeah, you can check it out. This is something I just found off Google, right? It's not like I have any inside information or anything, right? It's just off Google. Check it out. I don't know if it's something that you can apply to if you're still there, but that's how sometimes I find all this information. I just check online, stay connected to some of these organizations that offer some of this training thing. Now they offer some scholarships, right? You can see right here. I can't even highlight what I can't highlight it. Anyway, but this section here, scholarships and sponsorships, right? So you can check it out to see if it's something that you can that works with your with your plans or your program that you qualify for. But if you're looking for an international student, let me see. Did I close it? Okay. Let's see. Gotta bear with me. I don't do this on a regular basis, so it takes some getting used to. Okay, cool. All right. I hope I answered your question. All right. The best thing I can say is, see what you qualify for. There's Egypt Air, but right now there's no program that I can recommend to you that you qualify for as an international student. All right. Drums, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're welcome. Next one here is Gonjal. Can you please suggest me good career program? I'm an India student. I'm applying to go to EFTA Emirates training. Yeah. So I honestly, I've answered this question like 3-4 times already. I have no. If you're going to EFTA Emirates for training, that means you're funding this, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Gonjal. I believe that you're funding this because I know that Emirates does not sponsor international students. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, let me know you can just continue with the chat. I'll see. The wing challenge wasn't hard for me. The issue was the numerical reasoning. Oh, okay. So what you mean? It was very challenging. You had around 20 seconds to it. Oh, I see. Okay, interesting. Yeah, just at least you know where you came short, right? I hope that, and something I'll say is sometimes people think it's one thing when in reality it's something else, right? Sorry. So what I'll say is that try to get your feedback, okay? Just to be sure that was exactly what hindered you from progressing. So before you make any assumptions, yes, you might have struggled with that assessment, but guess what? You might have actually done pretty well. And then to your surprise, or when you get your feedback, hopefully you get one, you may realize that wasn't actually what hindered your progress, okay? How can I find scholarships? Great question. One of the places you can get scholarships. All right. The first thing I'll say is that I don't know what country you're in, okay? But let's just assume that you are in any country. Start with your Google for that country. So if you're in, I don't know, India, google.india, right? I think that's how you can get that. And search for scholarship programs for aviation, of course, right? Try to search. Yeah, of course, you will come across a lot of dirt or just, what do you call it? A lot of maybe outdated information, right? So, of course, you have to vet that yourself. The next thing I'll say is move on to your airlines, the aviation organizations in India or in Europe or in Africa. Go to those aviation organizations. If you have your governing body, right? So, for example, in the US, it's the FAA, right? In Europe, it's EASA. Then you have CAA for those in the UK, right? For Nigeria, I can't remember what that one is again now. But all those governing bodies sometimes would offer scholarship programs to people who meet certain requirements, whether it's living in a particular region, with living below a certain income level, whatever that may be, right? Check those aviation organizations. The next thing you can do, all right, is so in particular states. Now, in the US, they have states. In Nigeria, we have states. Some countries use counties. No, not counties. What is it called again? I can't remember what the word is called now. But in certain regions within province, right? I think Canada uses province, right? So in certain places, in certain regions within a country, the governing bodies may offer scholarship programs to people within those places. So that's the next thing I would go to, right? Within your state, in your province, in your, country, region, or whatever, find programs that aviation organizations that are in that area and look for scholarship programs. Now, if you cannot find this information online, okay, what I'll say is that, sorry, I'm with this. What I'll say is that pick up a phone, call them, right? I know it might be awkward, especially if you're young, but if you need an adult to help you, call them and ask, are there any scholarship programs that are available to people, like you? And that might be one way to go, right? The next thing is your school, right? If you are in a school that is, maybe it's in a university or it's a high school, reach out to those people that are in a position of maybe scholarship procurement, job procurement. Those people are generally knowledgeable about scholarship programs. Reach out to them and see, okay, what aviation scholarships are you eligible for? And they may be able to point you in the right direction. Okay, I think I've shared 5 already, right? The next thing you can do is to, what was the next thing? Oh yeah, military, right? Look at the military bodies you have, Navy, Air Force, all that, right? Check to see what programs they offer. You just never know. Now, finding a scholarship is like finding gold, I'll be honest with you, because before if you don't get on it, everybody's already applied, or it's too late, or they already met the requirements of people that needs to apply, or it's closed, right? So the point here is, when you find a list of scholarship programs, just because it is closed doesn't mean that you then forget that information or you delete that information. To give you something that I do, all right, this is what I do. When I find the scholarship programs, I copy the information, all right, the name, the email address of people, contact information of people. Now, of course, I'm not actively looking for a scholarship right now, but for the sake of the channel, sometimes I do this if I have the time. But for you that you're truly interested in finding a scholarship program, what you then do is copy that information, put it on a Word document or on a Google Sheet document, and then note the date that it last opened. So usually they run the scholarship programs every year, most of the time. Note that date down, and that way, when you, let's say, 6 months has passed, right? If you don't store that information, guess what? You're going to forget. So by you noting down a list of scholarship programs, even though you might not be able to apply to them at that point, guess what? Another time will come around, right? It's always going to be another year, right? Another program would open up in terms of another scheme for that scholarship would open up. So by noting those things down, you can always go back to that document and then see, okay, you know what? January was, let's say last January, right? The EA scholarship opened, and it was open for maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. Then you know that next January, there's a high probability that they're going to do the same thing again. So now that you've noted all the scholarship programs down, maybe 10, right, that you've noted the dates, all right, that they last opened. Then the next thing is start preparing for them. A lot of people, this is the mistake a lot of you guys make, and I'm going to be honest with that. A lot of people, and this I've made the same mistake, I'll be honest, right? You see these programs, you're like, oh man, it's too late. I didn't apply to it. I close it, and then I forget it. Then I found out, oh man, I didn't apply to this one. I've forgotten. I should have done this. I forgot about it, or I didn't note it down, whatever. Then I close that information, and you forget. Guess what? 2 weeks later, you've forgotten about all those scholarship programs. You don't do that. In order to get into a scholarship program, you have to be on top of things. And for you to be on top of things means that you note it down, set a reminder. If you use an iPhone, go to your calendar, 1st of January 2026, check for Air League scholarships, or check for ESA scholarships, or check for OBAP scholarship. That way it will remind you, and then you already have the link. You go to your file. In fact, on your calendar, you can do that, right? You put in the link to those websites, and that way you pretty much streamline the process. Getting into a scholarship is not something that I can offer to you, because guess what? By the time I get it to you, it's already, most of the time, it's already too late, because I would record a video. It would take maybe I'll record for right now. I have a video that is ready to maybe be released next Monday or Tuesday, depending on when I choose to release it, right? By the time I release that video, it's already too late for you, because by the time you get that information, thousands of people already applied. And it's not because I am not trying to get it to you. It's just because maybe I'm working, maybe I'm busy, life happens, right? So that is why I always encourage you, make a list of the scholarship programs, maybe 10, right? At least anyway. Put a date there, right? Set reminders. So maybe it's January. Note the ones that will open in January, put it on a reminder, so that way you start checking January 2026. The ones that will open in March or April, set reminders so that you can start tracking those things. Then the important part that a lot of people also miss, you want to wait until the scholarship opens before you start preparing. That is the wrong thing you do, right? What you want to do is to start preparing now for that January 2026 scholarship. Now that you know what the requirements are, you've found the information. What are the list of requirements? Do you need to be a member of that organization? Do you need to meet maybe some experience requirements? Maybe you need some, I don't know, qualifications. Whatever would help your application, this is the time to get it now. Not because it's closed and you forget about it. And that's something you don't want to do. I guess I should have titled this "How to Get a Scholarship." Anyway, I think I've really gone on that enough. But I hope that helps you, dear. Or that's a great question, by the way. And just so you know, I can be very, I can get carried away talking about these things, because the goal is that you are able to take this information and you apply it to your own life, and hopefully you get the results that you want. Like I said, when people send me screenshots of their achievements and awards, it makes me happy, right? Because at the end of the day, that is the purpose of all of this, you know. All right, let's see. Moving on to the next one. So my lines only require 500 hours in total. I think I already answered that. Wait, let me see. So my lines only require 500 hours total in Australia. If I get my application, my ATPL theories and MCCS, can I join a direct entry F4? For most part, yes, that's how it works, right? Once you get your ATPL, you get your hours, right? That's usually how it works. You apply, and then of course you go through the interview process, you do some assessments, and that's it, really. There's nothing special about it once you meet the requirements. What is BA Speedbird? When is BA Speedbird next? Okay, the next time that opens would probably be next year, from what I understand. Either late fall, but most of the time it's only done once a year. Right, so I believe it's either next year. Okay, early next year anyway. Zopa, assuming I have my CPL and MERR. Yes, absolutely. For that question, correct. Okay. Thank you. You're really good, man. Thank you, sir. You're welcome there, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you joining this live, of course, and I'm glad I'm able to answer your questions and point you in the right directions. Okay. Yes, we will fund it. Oh, that's awesome, Gonjal. All right. So yeah, the reality is that if you're going to fund it, then great. And that is in regards to this question. For those of you that may not have seen that question, I'm going to go back to it now. Let me see if I can find it. Gonjal. Why is it deleted? I guess you deleted it. Oh, no. That's it. Right. Okay. Yeah. So if you're going to fund it, that's a great place to start. Right. Now, if you're looking for a cadet program, now, I'm sure you've seen the Indigo cadet program. There's another one out there from India. I forgot. Is it Air India? I know there's Indigo and there's another one that offers cadet programs. I'm pretty sure you've probably checked them out, right? Because those offers, from what I've heard, they're pretty good cadet programs, right? And that way you are not in a position where you train and you're waiting for a job, and hopefully, you can train and just go straight to the airline. Now, I'm guessing you've done your research on that. I do not know why you didn't apply to those ones to train, considering you have the funds to train, if that makes sense. But what I would say is that those are the two that I know from India. Any other cadet program would require that you have the rights to live and work within the country, which even if you have the funds to pay for it, they still would not take you, because unless you have the right to live and work in that country. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right, here, not an issue. Is there Speedbird for 2026? Yeah, that's the plan for iPad, Hero iPad. That's the plan. Well, at least based on the information that is available. I'm saying that's the plan. Like I'm part of the team. No, I'm not part of the team. But the point here is, yes, from the information, they have plans to run the program again in 2026. All right. So I'm sorry. I'm probably screwing up your name here. Sophonias, could you do a program for international students without any connections and have plans to pursue their pilot training abroad with no finance? I hope I'm not misunderstanding your question, right? Let me scroll up. I think that question. I think what you're asking is, as an international student, could you train abroad in a foreign country, right? And have plans to pursue their training program with no finance? The short answer to that is no, as an international student. The long answer to that is, if you move to a country, okay, as an international student, there are ways you can integrate into that country. Maybe some might be getting an employment, some might be maybe getting married, some might be getting a sponsored program, like what do you call those things again? Like the visa lottery that they do, in the US specifically. So there are means in which you can integrate into a country as a foreigner. So in that context, you can get a scholarship as a foreign student in a foreign country. assuming you meet the requirements of your status. That is the long answer to that. But as an international student living abroad outside of that country where the scholarship originates, you are likely not going to get it. Very, very unlikely. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. Sorry. All right. Let's see. Hi. So my first plan is to get PPL from the Bombay Flying Club in my 11th standard itself. After getting my PPL and clearing all my DGCA exams, I will after 12th apply for EFTA. That's a good plan. You got a plan down, right? I'm not too familiar with the school system in India, right? But my guess is you seem like you know what you're doing, right? Just keep it up, right? Go after it and go hard, right? Go hard, and especially when you're in a position to fund this, that is a great place to be, and it means that you can plan and execute based on the plan. As I then will have experience of each and everything, making the training easy for me. Absolutely. That's a great plan. I don't see why not. Why you shouldn't execute on that. Hello, I'm 17 years old from India. What is the best cadet program? I've answered this question. I'm sorry. I can't answer this again. I've answered it like 4 times already now. There's no best cadet program for international students. Unfortunately, like I said, you have to either be within the programs that I know of anyway, right? Those are the things I would say. All right, Yusuf Production, Airbus or Boeing? Airbus all the way. I'll be honest on that one. Airbus all the way. Yep, I like that question, by the way. But yeah, Airbus, definitely. All right, I don't like Boeing. Now, maybe just the one I was trained on, but I prefer Airbus for sure. All right, I had to take that off. It was kind of hurting my ears, especially with the glasses. Okay, let's see. Audio is still good. Great. I'm planning to start my PPL in September 25 at Aeros Flight School in the UK, then work towards F80PL. I don't have the right to live and work in the EU. Should I go for a UK CAA only or a dual UK ESM? Great question. This is a question I'm trying to answer now. I might need to move myself or maybe move this up. This is from MKH. One thing I would say is, what are your options, right? I don't know where you're from. Like, are you from the EU region, right? You says I don't have the right to live and work in EU. Okay, so you're not from the EU region. The reason why I'm finding it hard to understand this question better is I want to know what your options are. So for example, let me use myself as an example, okay? Let's assume that when I left Nigeria, okay, this was a long time ago, 2010. Let's assume that I had to go train in EU, right? What I would have done would have been to train in EU and then go back to my country, okay, and then do my conversion. Okay, so I'm from Hong Kong and all the age. Okay, good. So in this case, right, I'm glad that you're able to answer that. In this case, unless you're planning to reside permanently in EU or UK, right, getting the 2 licenses or the EU and EASA, the dual, if it's going to cost you a lot of money to do that, I wouldn't. That's where I'm going. Okay. If you don't, I only have UK and it's okay, great. So if you have UK option, right, then just do UK, right? Get a UK license. Getting a dual might help you maybe down the line in the future. But remember, you can always get this added on at some point. I believe that's how it's always done for most of these licenses. You can always add on, maybe do a conversion at some point. So my thought process is I would prefer to get the UK, keep my Hong Kong open, right? The HK, right? Keep that open as well. So maybe if I need to do my conversion, I don't know what your governing body is in that region, but I would definitely keep those options open. So if you have the UK option and I have the Hong Kong option, I would get the 2. So that way I can apply to the two regions. I can apply for job in UK and I can apply for jobs in Hong Kong, and that way I have options, right? Because I don't know what the job market is in for Hong Kong, but I know that the region is also it's growing. They have a large population as well. I mean, I would believe at some point there will be an opportunity for you either in both places. But the point here is which one comes first is the question that we can't answer. So keeping those open will be important. Now, with the EASA option, if it's not going to cost me a lot of money and you have the funds to do it, sure, get it and get it right away. But if it's in a situation where you may have to maybe break a bank or whatever, that I would progress with caution, because what's the point of getting it when it's not necessarily required right away? Now, unless it's required, I don't fly in that region, just so you know. I fly in the US, so I can't say specifically what the requirement would be. But my advice is, if I were in your shoes, I would focus on the two that are currently open to me, which would be the UK and the HK, and get the necessary ability to fly in those two places. And then when the time comes, if I realize that the option to fly in the EU region or to work there, remember, you don't need a license, and I think you know this already. You don't need, with a UK license or the CAA, right? I believe it's CAA, right? You don't necessarily need to have the EASA as well to fly in those regions. You only need the UK, so or the CAA for that to work. I hope that makes sense. It's just like having an FAA license. You can fly anywhere in the world, but in order to work for an airline that operates out of an EU base, you need an EASA, generally speaking. For you to work for an airline that operates out of the US, you need an FAA. So without just making that too long, I hope that makes sense. All right, the pronunciation of a name is close to perfect. Oh, wow, nice. I guess I did well on that. So Fanaz, I think that's the way it's said. Cool. Thanks for letting me know. Chibs, thanks for the feedback on my CV. I really appreciate what you do, and I'll be sure to take the advice. Great. I'm happy that you saw the email. I was worried at some point. Did you actually see the email or not? And I hope that you saw the information I shared with you. That be very watchful of the font. All right, that sometimes can screw up things, especially when it comes to these automated systems where you are using the applicant tracking system and it doesn't format it right. So anyway, I'm glad that helps. Okay, Gunjal, can you please make a video explaining the full structure of getting into EFTA from scratch? So this is the thing. I would love to do this, all right? I would love to make a video on that, but I'll be honest with you, sometimes it can be hard to know what the audience want, right? Sometimes you make a video, it gets 10 views or 50 views. I'll be honest with you, it's discouraging when you see that. And it's not about the views, it's about impact, all right? About if 50 people watches and they feel they get the information that they need and it helps them achieve their goal, then I'm part of their story. And that is really the goal here. At some point down the line, those people who have helped will say, oh man, they saw this guy on YouTube, they never knew him from anywhere, but hey, he helped me a lot, right? And that is great. So yes, I would look into it, okay, but know that sometimes making a dedicating time to make a video for one person based on the request can be hard. I'll be honest on that, okay, because hey, it takes time to make these videos, and if 10 people watches it, it's like, oh gosh. I hope you understand. But yeah, I'll look into it. Now, one thing I can always say is, if you really want my help on this, right, you can always reach out to me, and then we can talk about, the process itself, where, maybe how your application looks, how your CV looks, and of course, some things I do for a service. But the point here is, there's often some things I can help you with for free without, honestly, I would be glad to help you just like as I do with my videos. So that's the truth. I'm from Hong Kong and I hold HK. I think I already answered that. Why is getting into EFTA so tough, and do they prefer their national student over? No, I don't think so. It's tough, right? Because they want to make sure that when you get in there, you succeed. It costs a lot of money. I remember the last time I checked, it was around 150,000. Maybe 160,000 US dollars, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong, but the last time I checked, it was really expensive. So they want to make sure that when you when you show up to train, you're going to excel. So it makes sense to make it as tough as possible, especially since you're paying for it, right? That's the only reason. Now, understand that there's so many flight schools out there, and the process isn't as difficult, okay? And you still get good education. So it's really a preference thing. If that's the type of school you want to go to and you have the funds to do it, then absolutely go ahead and get it done, right? But you have to prepare. And remember, the more preparation you put into it, the higher your chances that you will do well during training, okay? All right, moving on here. It makes sense. Residential and citizenship requirements are the biggest obstacles for adequately qualified candidates for a job that requires traveling out of the country. Absolutely. Yeah, that is always the case. So without boring you with this information, right? This is just something that I said I was going to make a video on it, but I'm not sure if I did. I don't think I did. But here's the deal. When you are actually, let me go that. Okay. When you, but that's when it's like that. So just to give you a quick background, all right, of all of these cadet programs. Right after World War II, right, everybody returned. You know, the war ended. Countries needed to improve their aviation, right? Because, for example, the US, the EU regions, even the Asian regions, they had already developed their aviation through the military, right? With new airplanes, faster airplanes, more powerful airplanes. And of course, the realization came that, hey, all these pilots could be put to use and can fly commercially. But guess what? In order to meet rest requirements and meet duty requirements, there weren't enough pilots. So there was a need for what? More pilots. Guess what? In order to become a pilot, it was so expensive that people couldn't afford it. And then the next thing is, hey, qualified people to train those people who could afford it wasn't there, because unless you had gone through a military route, there was no way you could become a pilot. So what did the government do? The government decided to let the military start to take on cadets, right? So you go through the military, you become a cadet, and then eventually they train you to fly. So they vet you. Do you want to fly helicopters? You know, that's how all those. I'm not a military guy, but I just know about this information. Okay. So long story short, through that process, they realized, wait, it takes a long time to become a pilot. You can't just train somebody 6 months and throw them on a Boeing 707, you know, those old airplanes, right? And train them to fly. There's a process to it. So guess what they did? The government decided that in order for them to bolster their aviation industry, they opened up their hiring to foreign pilots, because they knew that, hey, there are some pilots from maybe Asia that could fly. There's some pilots from maybe, now of course, maybe not Asia at the time, but the point here is they open up to foreigners to apply and work for them. But that wasn't still enough, because at this point, we're entering a new age where there's a lot of development there's in the industry, right? In general, right? Whether it's making cars, making airplanes, making things faster, making things bigger. People wanted to fly more. People wanted to travel more. Population growing, right? So in order to have a constant flow of people who could fly, they opened up the cadets application to foreigners. So all these airlines, starting with British Airways, by the way, okay, it was called BOAC. I can't remember the full name now, British Airways something corporation. And that was how this cadet program started. And then followed by Lufthansa, followed by KLM, followed by Air France. And that's how the whole Europe region really started with cadet program. So they opened it up to foreigners at the time, and foreign students could apply, internationals could apply, and then eventually moved on to Middle East, right, with Emirates and the likes. But guess what has happened in the past, since maybe 2000, late 2000s, 2020? Yeah, 2000s, late 20s. First thing was 9/11 started putting a dent on all of that. Why? Because now you couldn't really trust a lot of, well, foreigners in a way where they knew that, and I say that with sensitivity to people from different regions, because I know, you know, we're open to that. But one thing I'll say is that this whole industry became very sensitive to hiring people from foreign countries for various reasons. And then the next thing that came onto that was immigration, right? there was a lot of mass migration of people from different regions that want to move to the Western region and the likes, right? And guess what? Those opportunities started closing up. So in as much as the last one that I can think about is the Emirates Flight Training Organization, Emirates Flight, I can't remember the full name now, for the cadet programs for in Emirates. They are the last ones that actually do have, and I'm not sure even if they still have it, but the last one they ran, I believe, was in 2019. I can't remember particularly, but they haven't done anything recently at all. And that is, again, because now everybody now focuses on their citizens, right? So that's just how that works. I hope that makes sense. Hey, Bulls. It's been a while. Thank you. Thanks for joining again. Just wanted to let you know I passed my PPL check right yesterday. That's great. Well, congratulations. Now you're a pilot, right? You are a pilot. You can fly yourself. You can fly family members. That's great. And that's one step in the right direction, for sure. That makes sense. Thank you so much. That's awesome. You're welcome, MKH. Yeah, so thanks. You're welcome, Chibs. Sorry if you already mentioned it, but could you talk more about your story? What got you into aviation? What route did you take to become a pilot? That's a great question, and that's Chibs. Thanks for asking. So I'm going to give you a brief summary of it. All right. So at the age of 5, I got interested in flying. And how did that happen? I went to an airport, saw a British Airways 747. This was while I was in Nigeria, by the way. And I fell in love with it. I was like, man, I would love to become a pilot. Why? Because I asked my mom, mind you, I was 5 years old. I asked my mom, how does that get in the air? And my mom said, oh, it's flown by pilots. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to become a pilot. And that stuck with me all through, right? And even when I went to secondary school or high school, I always told myself I would like to be a pilot. I would love to be a pilot. Mind you, I've never been on an airplane at the time. Until I turned 17. That was my first time on an airplane, okay? And that was to a flight to the UK. And that really ignited the passion even more. But guess what? There wasn't funds to train at the time. So I had to go to college or university. I did computer science, graduated. But during that period, I knew that I still wanted to fly. I still wanted to become a pilot. So after I graduated, started looking into flight schools. And I literally applied to schools in France, schools in South Africa, in the US, and I got responses from, I believe, not all of them, because some of the schools are terrible at replying, I'll be honest with you. But something that I would never forget, and this is something that still inspires me to make this, that really inspired me to make this channel to today, was that I needed information on how to apply or how to get started. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anyone in the aviation industry. No friends, no uncle, no aunties, no daddy, no mommies in the aviation industry, right? So there was no one that could point me in the right direction. So one thing I did was I went online and I started applying to, started messaging random people that I thought were pilots anyway. At least they had plane picture or whatever they on their faces. And back in the day, I remember there was MySpace. All right. If you guys know MySpace, then you are OG, of course. But for me, it was, I remember Facebook had just started at the time, 2010. So I remember particularly Facebook. I went on Facebook as well to find some people. And I found some people in Brazil, some people in South Africa, some people that I sent messages to. But guess what? Out of all the people I messaged, only maybe 1 or 2 people responded. YouTube existed or started around that time, but there was no information about how to become a pilot on YouTube. So the point I'm trying to make is that all of that is what has inspired me to create this channel that I have today. Okay. And I'm grateful that a lot of people have benefited from this. And I hope that it will continue that way, because sometimes the numbers can be discouraging. I'll be honest with you. I think I mentioned that earlier. But to get back into how I get into aviation. So I applied to flight schools, got into schools got admission into the one in Florida. And then I literally finished my NYSC. For those of you who might be in Nigeria right now, you probably know what NYSC is. It's like a National Youth Service Corps. Finished that, and then I moved over to the United States, to train. Started my training. And by the way, I had no clue. I mean, the only clue I had was I had the brochure that showed how many hours I would train, all that stuff. And to those of you who may not have enough funds, hey, this is a good reference. I didn't have all the funds for training. So the point here is, do you need to save up $100,000 to start training? No. Getting started sometimes is all you need. So anyway, started training 2010, 2012, got my CPL, 2014. By that time, I already had my CFI, II, all that stuff, started instructing. And 2015 was when I left instructing, all right? So I instructed, got my 1,500 hours and the likes, and eventually joined an airline in the US 2016, and worked for the airline for 5.5 years, became a captain, then joined another airline, worked there for about less than a year. Then, of course, joined the airline I'm currently with right now. So that is really a brief information on what got me interested in flying and what I've done so far. Okay, so I hope that that helps you and gives you some clarity as to my background and the things I've done. Do you have a private consultation available? Yeah, I do actually. If you check the link below, I believe below this chart, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's there. But there's a stand page I have. On that stand page, there's a if you want to, you don't have to pay for it, right? If you want to, it takes my time. So definitely we can book something if you want, okay? If you want, and it's in there's a link below. Or went to Nigeria for the first time. Wow, mine was Eric when I was 4. That's great. That is awesome, man. How was Nigeria, by the way? When did you go? What year? I'm curious. So yes, to answer your question, Ganjal, yes, I do. You can check out the link below, and if you go to my stand page, maybe I should actually add the link now. I usually don't put it there, but or just send me a message on Instagram, and then I'll send you the link. Okay, that's another way to go about it. As an Indian, can't I work in Europe or Australia as a pilot? Well, to answer your question, Ved, you can if you have the ability to get the work permit and meet the work requirements, okay, or hiring requirements rather. You can work as a pilot anywhere if you have the license, okay, you meet the requirements in terms of the job requirements. So most countries will say you need the right to live and work in a place. Okay, so as an Indian, I have a lot of friends that are Indians that work in the US, just so you know, right? But the point is, the job will only hire you if you meet the requirement to work in the US, if that makes sense. So yes, you can be a pilot anywhere in the world as long as you meet that requirement of being a legitimate migrant, if that makes sense. Yours was Arik Air when I was 4. That's cool. Went to Nigeria for the first time. I went in 2014. Oh wow, that's been a while now. You should go again. I'm sure a lot has changed by now. Let's see. Have you heard any insight, any tips around the latest in-person assessment, BAs? Yeah, like I said, I think I already gave out. If you're preparing for that, just know that yes, keep practicing. I hope you're practicing something, right? Whether it's the assessment, make sure you keep doing that. But what I'll say is that you have, let me move this a little bit. You have the situation is, and this is common. This is not the first time this is happening, just so you know. A lot of times people would go in with this expectation that, oh, what I've practiced is exactly what I'm going to get, right? That's not the case. That doesn't happen that way, right? So you always make sure that it might be close, but it's not exact. So make sure that when you are practicing, practice to have an idea, but don't practice thinking this is exactly what you would get. And the reason for that is when you show up to the actual assessment, you want to make sure that you're flexible and you can adapt to what you're given. Okay, all the programs out there, the one from PASS, you can check it out if you haven't been using PASS, but check it out. I know that a lot of people say it helps, but it's not perfect. There's one from SkyTest as well, and they say it helps, but none of it is perfect because at the end of the day, the actual thing feels different. The PFD exercise you would do is different. The multitasking eagle test or whatever they call it, right? It's gonna feel different, okay? Because at the end of the day, its intention, it's the goal is to test you, right? So it can't be the exact same thing. So yeah. keep practicing. But I've gotten feedback. Some people said it was a little tough. I'll be honest with you. So it's good to be able to adapt. All right. Now, if this is your first time, what I would say is congratulations getting to this stage. It is difficult to get here. It's not easy. So it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I wish you success for sure. I really do wish you success. It's an amazing opportunity for those of you who are in this race for the Speedway program. I wish you success from the bottom of my heart for sure. How did you fund your training initially? Great question. I funded it, honestly, I didn't fund it myself. It was my parents. It was through my parents. I'm actually checking something. How come? Oh, I see what is going on. Okay. I just want to make sure something is not left. I'm not dropping frames. Okay. Yeah, so I didn't fund it myself. It's not like I worked or anything. It was through my parents, and we just, honestly, it was more, pay as you go type deal. There were times I ran out of money, and those are the things that a lot of people don't say. They just say, oh yeah, go train. Especially if you are in a position where you can get loans, sure, get a loan, knock it out. But I was in a position where I couldn't raise loans. I grew up in Nigeria. Nobody will give you a loan for flight training, right? So all that I had to do was really focus on spending the least amount of money, and how I was able to do that was to prepare as much as I can for every assessment, for every flight, for every ground lesson we did. Prepare as much as you can. That will save you a lot of money. Another thing that depending on where you are, depending on how the program is structured. Some people will say try to do your ground lessons, on your own. You can do that, but you always still need an instructor to teach you some of these things, right? So you can save money by doing some groundwork ahead of time. That's where I'm going. But the point is there was no other magic to it. Now, over time, over the years, I've met a lot of people who saved up money. I've met some people who saved up, worked 2 jobs, right? And they flew maybe on the weekends. I've met people who did IT or they were in the industry. So they went to school, got their college degree, started working, and started saving money for training. Hey, you got to do what you got to do to do something that will fulfill you, right? No one is dealt the same hand. We would all have different challenges. We would all have different setups. Some people are born with a silver spoon. Some people would have to just, fight for their dreams. And if that is you who needs to fight for your dreams, then do what you have to do. If you were born with a silver spoon where you have people that can support you, not necessarily with a silver spoon. I know everybody is struggling, but the point here is some people are, wealthy where they have a lot of money to do stuff like this. Then absolutely take the opportunity and don't lose it, because know that thousands and millions of people would love to have you in their life or be in your situation. And this is really coming from a point of, I've seen people who their parents, very wealthy people, but they won't take training seriously, right? I've seen those over and over during my time while I was training, during my time as an instructor, and the like. So the point here is, if you have the opportunity to do this and you have the support that is necessary, then don't waste it. Okay, do what you have to do. Now, if you have to get a loan to get it done, hey, do what you have to do. All right. Okay, cool. Aviation lover. I'm thinking about doing an aerospace engineering degree and at the same time doing modular pilot training. So what do you think? See, this here, aerospace engineering degree. Okay, there are 2 schools of thought. Okay, and I'm going to share both sides with you, or two sides you can be on, a school of thought about this. Aviation lover. All right, I'm not going to tell you not to do what you are interested in. If aviation, aerospace engineering degree is what you are interested in, sure, go ahead, right? That's fine. You know what you are really passionate about. But if you're just trying to get a degree so that you have something outside of flying, That is a good thing. Okay, so thumbs up for that. But here's something I also want you to keep in mind. Sometimes having a degree in something that is slightly outside of aviation, not necessarily aerospace engineering, okay? Because aerospace engineering is quite focused on, now I'll be honest with you, by the time you actually take those courses, you probably be taking similar courses as somebody studying mechanical engineering, with slight differences in some of the electives you might do. But you end up taking majority of, since it's an engineering focused degree, you end up taking similar courses through the years. Your electives will be different, right? So the point here is you may consideration, right? Nothing wrong with aerospace engineering, just so you know. But sometimes having something slightly outside of aviation, not completely off, because engineering is definitely a great degree to have, right? But something in that space that is outside of aviation sometimes give you a more broader option, if that makes sense. And let me explain what I mean to you. So you get your aerospace engineering degree, and now you get your pilot license and all that stuff. You're in a position to get definitely any airline job as you want, especially with a degree as well. Now, don't get me wrong, airlines don't require you to have a degree, just so you know, for those of you who might be thinking, oh, do I need a degree? No, you don't need a degree. But when two people show up to the table to an interview and you're being asked about, you know, your life experiences and things of that nature and how you deal with challenges and how guess what? If I'm an interviewer, I'll probably put more preference to somebody that has a degree. Why? Because they've shown that they can actually stay true to something for 4 years or 5 years, depending on how long your degree is, and they came out successful, compared to somebody who has no degree and has not proven that they have the tenacity to achieve success in something that is rigorous. So mentally, all right, and psychologically speaking, I'm already leaning towards somebody that has an engineering degree. Just, you might call it bias, call it whatever you want, right? But that's just the reality of life. People want to see that you have a track record of success in something for them to believe what you're saying. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that because you don't have a degree, doesn't mean that you don't have success track, or you don't have the ability to succeed in something. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just trying to tell you the reality of how humans would think about these two people. So the point here is, back to your question. Yes, having an aerospace degree is great. Aerospace engineering degree is great. But maybe also consider something that gives you puts you in a position where, let's assume that you retire, for example, retire from flying, and you want to go into this other thing that you're interested in, that you may be interested in. Maybe having a degree in that thing gives you more options, if that makes sense. Something to think about. It was okay. A lot of memory from that time. It's kind of hazy, so I can't go into detail. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. I understand. What do you think are the biggest problems faced in aviation today? And what's your take on these issues? On how these issues can be solved. So this is a great question. This feels like an interview already, but I'm gonna go for it, okay? Because I love conversations like this. One thing I'll say is this, right? When it comes to the challenges facing the aviation industry right now, we have a couple, and this is coming from the aviation industry in the US. We have a situation where we have a new administration, a new president with with different policies, and the policies that have been imposed are causing a lot of countries to panic, especially the allies of the US. So putting them in a situation where they are not in a position to confidently plan for the future in terms of their investments and finances and policies and trade in particular. So if you guys are in the news, you probably are hearing about trade wars and tariffs and all this stuff, right? So that is definitely impacting the aviation industry right now, because you have a lot of people who cannot plan their trips. For example, Canada or Canadians are unable to plan their trips because of this trade war that is going on. They are actually canceling their bookings because, hey, nobody wants to be friends with the US right now. You know what I mean? So the point here is you have a lot of situations that are developing due to these tariffs and putting a lot of uncertainty in people's plans, causing the aviation industry to feel the pressure. Case in point, you have Delta, Southwest Airlines, Alaska Airlines, American Airlines, Spirit Airlines, literally almost all the airlines in the US are pulling back their guidance. Some of them are canceling their flights. Some of them are actually considering laying off people, not necessarily pilots at this point anyway. And all of that has been due to the policies and trade wars that are currently going on. If that continues, that is not a great thing for people, which would affect the planning or traveling the aviation industry, in the aviation industry, which would affect airlines, and airlines would start to cut back on spending money on new airplanes, right? Another issue that we see right now is, of course, there's a lot of tension still ongoing in, with Russia and Ukraine. You have tensions with the Houthis, and all these policy, all these factors that really are outside of the aviation industry are impacting the aviation industry indirectly. And all of that would often affect things in terms of people's livelihood, right? Eventually, if the airlines cannot sustain the losses they're experiencing, because, for example, American Airlines actually reported their earnings. And by the way, hey, just so you know, I actually do love finance, so I'm always into like a lot of finance stuff as well, and that's how I know some of these things. So I'm not just all about aviation. I love finance. Actually, let me tell you that. So, aviation, of course, finance, and technology. Those three things are things that I love, right? And I can sit down all day doing all this stuff. So with that said, to answer your question, how can this problem be solved? One of the things that can solve the problem right now for the aviation industry is to have some certainty in what is going on with the tariffs. And I know this is not really related to aviation, but to answer your question, that is the most imminent problem that is dealing with aviation industry, that is affecting the aviation industry right now. In fact, a lot of airlines in the US are not as pulling back on hiring pilots right now. They are not hiring at the moment. Why? Because of all of these things going on. And if it continues that way, we might start to see layoffs, and that is not what we want. That's what I would say about that. All right. Does holding both FAA and EASA licenses provide an advantage in employment opportunities? No, it doesn't. So you got to remember that these are just governing bodies, right? FAA, EASA. At the end of the day, you can fly, right? So governing body for the US is FAA, governing body for Europe is EASA, and having both licenses does not mean that you are better, because at the end of the day, with an EASA license or CA license, you can fly to the US and still fly pretty, safely. Now, can you work for an airline with an EASA license in the US? No, you would need an FAA. Yeah, even if you have trained under the EASA rules, if you want to work for for a US company, you would have to convert or get an FAA equivalent of the EASA. So if you have an ATPL EASA license, you need to get an FAA ATPL as well and meet the requirements and all that stuff. So the point is, it doesn't give you an advantage. And that is the thing. I remember somebody was asking about getting, was it team? I think it was MKH. It was MKH that asked that question earlier about Hong Kong and UK, right? So the point here is, having two licenses does not give you like, oh, now you're a better pilot. It doesn't work that way. Now, what could give you an advantage is having a degree, right? It's not a requirement, okay, but it is often preferred sometimes, depending on the airline, of course. Let's see, what is a typical day as a cadet in ground school? Maybe doing their ATPL theory while working towards their CPL flight hours requirement. Yep, that is correct. Now, this is where I always say that it's best to reach out to some of the people that are actually doing it right now, right, to get more up-to-date information. But a typical day, you are either doing your ground school, okay, where you are learning a lot of the theories and all that, or you are doing your simulator exercise, all right, depending on what phase you are in training. Because what happens is this, right? Let me nail it down to people that train in the US, because I trained in the US, I instructed in the US. The typical schedule for a cadet would be, you show up to school maybe 7, 8, sometimes 6 a.m., just so you know, depending on the schedule, what you have on the schedule for the day. It might be a flight, or it might be a simulator exercise, or it might be a ground lesson, or it might be a ground school. All right. So generally speaking, when you start, you are doing a ground school phase first, where you do a ground school for maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on how long this structure is, the schedule is. You're in there for maybe 2.5 hours, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, depending on, again, how this schedule is made. And you all learn together, right, with the other groups of people in the same phase as you. You learn, and then after that, once you finish, right, you are then sent off to do your individual lessons with your instructors. And that is where you may meet with your instructor that day. You may have something to do with your instructor that day. You may not. So you may be done for the day, where you then go home or back to your dormitory or back to your hostel, where you live, right? And then you prepare for the next day. Now, typically, you may end up meeting with your instructor that afternoon or that morning, depending on what the schedule is, again, where you do maybe a ground lesson. And a ground lesson, there's a curriculum that you're following as you execute, as you advance in training. Another one could be something in lines of, you show up early in the morning for a flight because you need to solo and you want to do your solo flight. And generally speaking, weather is better in the morning, where the winds are calm. You don't have, especially depending on where you're training, of course, the weather patterns in the area. But in Florida, for example, sometimes you may have favorable weather in the morning. So you show up in the morning, do your pre-flight, your instructor joins you at some point, you do your briefings, and then you go on that flight. Do your flight for an hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours, depending on what you're doing on that day. Come back, you do your debrief, what you learned, what you need to improve on. It grades you on how you performed, and then you're off to the next thing. The next thing could be you meeting with going for a ground school, right? Depending on what time you're starting. Or the next thing could be meeting with your instructor, doing a ground lesson again. So it all depends. And this is something you may do every day. Sometimes maybe every other day, including the weekends, sometimes depending on the school. So it all depends on how the program is structured, okay? But the point is that it can be very busy. And I've heard people that will say, oh, can they work while they're training? It can be hard, especially if you're trying to work during the day, right? If you have a flexible type work schedule, sure, you might be able to make it work. You might be able to pull it off. But if you have an inflexible schedule where you have to go to work at 7 a.m. and be done by 4 p.m. or go to work at 8 a.m. and be done by 5 p.m., it can be quite difficult to train with that. But again, people have done it. You just have to be able to find an instructor that works with you and get it done. All right. I hope that makes sense. I guess that might have been too long. I really love aerospace engineering, so that's not an issue. But do you think that flight training and degree can be done simultaneously? Yes, I believe they can be done simultaneously. Okay, aviation lover, they can be done simultaneously. Yes, you'd have to study, you would have to do your part, but it can be done simultaneously. Okay. Let's see. Last Tuesday, I completed an in-person cabin assessment for SPA. I've had the privilege to interact with previous scholars. They all appear to be 20 plus with extensive employment experience. Yeah, that sounds pretty true. Now, you would often see the occasional 19 or 17 or 18-year-olds. I think that's the minimum age anyway. But majority of the people you come across are in their 20s for sure, and some in their 30s too. All right. Do you trade? Chibs, I don't do it every day. I swing trade though, however, all right. I swing trade. I invest regularly, let's put it that way. But I don't day trade, if that makes sense. Like, sit down with the computer and be trying to catch the thing. No, I don't do that. I'm curious. It seems like you're interested. You are into like investing as well, What's your favorite stock that you own right now? I'm curious. All right, let's see. As a 19-year-old with only 1 year employment as a lifeguard, how can I compete with these people? Why should BA choose me over them? This is a very great question. Now, Bonda, just to let you know, just because you're 19-year-old, I don't know if you're male or female, but a 19-year-old doesn't mean that you are at a disadvantage. Just so you know, it's almost like an advantage depending on how you're able to discuss your experiences. If the only 1 year experience you have is as a lifeguard, remember, being a lifeguard it requires a lot of skills. ability to prioritize safety, right? That's one. Ability to multitask, ability to be able to swim, ability to maintain situational awareness, right? Ability to also help and provide help when necessary and know when help is needed, right? So all of these things are things that actually can be positioned well in your favor if you know how to tell your stories. I'm sure in your 1 year, you've had situations come up where you have to help somebody, right? Even if you might not have saved their life, quote unquote, but maybe help them in, I don't know, a potential unsafe situation, right? That is something that you need to find a way to tell that story in a way that is that shows that you can prioritize safety, you can maintain the right awareness when needed, you can lead your leadership skill, right? Because you as a lifeguard, you are probably having to tell people what to do and what not to do, instruct them on how to position themselves around the pool or whatever, right? So you have a lot of things that if you think well, you can find ways to talk about how you're able to lead in a particular situation, in a stressful situation, how you're able to work with people or your team members, how you're able to walk through maybe a conflict situation while doing your job, right? And you don't necessarily have to restrict yourself to the lifeguard aspect. I'm sure you also have other life experiences, whether in school, whether it's in sports, whether it's in the list can go on, right? Depending on what your background is. So what I would just say to you is that you have your own unique experience. You have your own unique strengths. You have your own unique abilities. Find them, okay? And put them down and think to yourself, how can I talk? What strength does this point to in this particular experience that you've had? What strength of mine can I tie it to? And it's going to go a long way, all right? So and of course this is more in preparation for your interview, okay? For the interviews that you have coming up. That's something that you want to do. On my assessment day, majority were 20 plus with extensive experience in the aviation industry as well. Correct. Don't let that scare you, okay? A lot of people may have a lot of aviation experience, but if you cannot tie it to your strength, if you cannot tie it to the pilot competencies, if you cannot tie it to just working on the job, then it's of no use. So what I would advise you is, or my advice to you would be, think about those pilot competencies, right? And find those strengths and find those stories using STAR concept and find ways you can highlight those competencies in your stories. Secondly, learn about the aviation industry as well. Even though it might all be theory or theoretical at this point, but try to learn as much as you can. That would help you and give you some understanding of what is expected. Duties of a pilot. What is a typical day of a pilot looks like? How can you prepare for a flight? How is that done, right? What are the things a pilot would have to do in preparation for a flight? Those kind of things are things that you should be familiar with. If you're truly interested in becoming a pilot, these are things that you want to read on, right? And I always say that read about safety, read about the pilot competencies, read about what else am I thinking of now? Pilot competencies, STAR, right? The STAR concept, be able to use that in your answers and talk about your experiences pretty well. Those things will really help you. Okay. Correction, most were 25 plus. I was the youngest. That's an advantage. It's truly an advantage, all right? If you can do it, just so you know, all right? That's something I want you to take away. You can do it. You have what it takes. Somebody of your age got it, I believe it was last year or 2 years ago. I can't remember now. So you have what it takes, okay? And don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt your abilities. You can pull it off for sure. Is it always worth it? Let's see. To transition from another job that have better starting salaries than the aviation industry for satisfaction and dreams, meanwhile risking years of training without any money? Is it always worth it? It depends, right? That's a personal question. It's hard for me to answer that for you. But let's assume that your goal is to now having money and being able to provide is good and provide for your family and all that. Those are definitely things that your dream, having a dream that doesn't pay you enough money is not going to be yes, you have fulfilled that dream, but you are not happy because you feel like you can't take care of the important things. And what is important is your family is important, right? Being able to afford things is also important. So my thought on that is it all depends on your lifestyle, right? It all depends on what you consider better starting salary. Now, I know that if you go through like a career program, like for example, British Airways, you're not making a lot of money at the beginning, right? But you have a track in front of you that all you just need to do is, if you stick to it, you do your job, you stay well, stay healthy, you would make something decent along the way, right? Secondly, if it's like a program that they sponsored your training, right? Assuming you are in that position where you could apply to a program like that, then they've sponsored your training, then there's no reason for you to worry as much because they've sponsored your training and yeah, you might not be making as much money, but at least you're not holding a lot of money. Now, what people have done, some people, if you are young, you can take risk, right? You can deal with not having a lot of money at the beginning. When you're much older, maybe you have family, maybe you have a kid, right? Maybe you have 2 kids. It can be hard for you to deal with earning less of a salary because, you know, just your needs are much higher. So what I would say is it depends. It really depends on your lifestyle. It depends on how much sacrifice you want to give to it, how willing you are to sacrifice for that dream. If your needs require a certain amount of money, I would say take care of your needs first. All right, take care of your needs. Do the important things that you need to do. If you need to take a higher paying job to take care of your needs or your taste, sure, do that. Because when you start out in aviation, you'll make a lot of money at the beginning, especially when you're starting out, right? It costs a lot of money. You'd have to pay a lot of money if you take loans, and you may not be able to make a lot of money as quick as you can, as you would desire, in comparison to other jobs where, you know, some jobs, you know, you're already making good money from the beginning, and it just increases from there. Again, depending on where you're from, depending on the country, depending on the airline. But something to consider. Great question though. I honestly do appreciate all these questions I'm getting. They are great questions, and I think you guys have made this much conversational and interesting. And I think I've spent, I don't know how many hours I've spent now, almost 2 hours, right? And that's great. I'm glad to be able to share this. I have the time today. I do have the time today. And by the way, actually, I need to give myself a round of applause. This is my first live this year. I believe so. This is my first live this year. I haven't done any lives this year because honestly, it does take time. And I have plenty of time in my hands this period. So I'm like, you know what? I've done the important things. I can come on live. All right. Somebody asked me a question, and I believe I can reference something I wrote down here. Oh yeah. That's to Bondat. All right. If you're still on, let me just answer something real quick. I want to say this. All right. Make sure that you are able to describe pretty clearly why you're motivated about working for example, British Airways, and why you're also interested in becoming a pilot. Your motivation goes a long way, and it's going to show through, right? In how you answer, in how your body language, in how you're speaking. So practice, especially if you're interviewing, practice interview, some of these responses. Now, don't become robotic. Don't script it or write it down word for word. You don't have to do that. But the point is that, let your true self shine through during your interview. There's a quote that is always said, try to sell yourself, right? Sell your strengths. Just because you are young doesn't mean that you're at a disadvantage in any way. No, it's not. All right. It's, in fact, can be an advantage. You can actually impress them by the things you say, by how you carry yourself, and how professional you show up that day. So it can really be an advantage. You got to understand that just because somebody have a lot of experience can work against them. All right. And I've coached, mentored, interacted with a lot of people who have a lot of experience and still don't get through. Why? Not because they can't become pilots. It's just that when you are in a very competitive race like this one, there's a lot that shows through more than your experience. in how you answer questions. I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Losing seniority and career progression in the other field while pursuing piloting on top of the cost of training and the salary difference on the pilot. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. But remember, aviation industry is also about seniority, which means that if you do not start as soon as you can, you're likely to find yourself in a position where you're starting much older, and you have a lot of young women and men that have been hired well ahead of you. I mean, that's life, right? There's never a perfect situation for everybody. Do what you have to do, right? Do what interests you, right? And go for it. At the end of the day, if it's your dream to achieve something, you can do it, right? And it's a dream. It's what you want to do. Then go for it. All right, see, I'm trying to get into trading so I can make money. Oh, that is so funny. I'm trying to get into trading so I can make money when I'm a pilot. That is that is not bad. I'll be honest with you. Okay, it's not a bad prospect in a way where you get into flying and then you're making money, and then of course you have some money to invest when you can. That is not a bad thing. I would say that learning now would help you, okay? But even though you're 16, I trade forex on demo accounts. Yeah, I don't like forex personally. That's just me, okay? That's just me. I prefer to invest in companies that I know that are likely going to do well long term. Foreign exchange and forex can be very sensitive and very volatile, and which means that you are in a position to you can lose a lot of money, and of course you can make a lot of money. So I gotta be honest on that. But I don't do forex. I've tried it, but it's not my cup of tea. I feel like it's not investing in my opinion. Right, it's not invested. I don't know what to, I don't want. It's not gambling also, right? Because some people are able to track the macroeconomics, policies, news, all those things that move the market, right? People are able to do that. That's not me. I feel like I don't have enough time to do that. But when it comes to investing in a company and finding opportunities and all that, those are things that I like to do. And talking about investing when you're flying and all that, that is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. A lot of pilots do invest, and some people, again, it's your interest. I'm interested in finance. That's why I do it, right? If you're interested in something else, you do something else. And that's why I keep up with all these things. That's why I keep up with the news about investments and all this. The two things I do when I'm off, apart from being a family man, of course, finance, aviation, and technology, right? Those are the things I read about and dabble my hands into and play with and all that. Sometimes I'm learning how to program again, even though I haven't programmed in a while. Just weird. Those are my interests, if that makes sense. So it's not like maybe, and it's not like I'm good at. It's not like I'm excellent at trading. No, I'm not. But one thing I know is that if you invest long term, you make money, right? The stock market is always going up. If you think about it that way, over the years it's always gone up. So that's just me. Fino, let's see. Hi Steven, beautiful channel. Thank you. Unfortunately, I did not pass this year. The Speedbird, blah blah blah. Okay, I will try again next year. I'm starting feeling my age, 38 years old, already at PP. I'm fine. Hi, Alessandro, Fino. I'm sorry that you didn't get through. You got to understand that, honestly, Speedbird program is, in as much as it's a great program, just like any of these career programs. But one thing is, when you have a lot of competition, right? It is harder, right? And all it takes is just one below average score and you're out, and you're going through multiple stages. I don't know what stage you got to, Fino, but one thing I'll say is that as a 38-year-old, it's not late to try again, right? You got to remember, I don't know how many times you've tried in the past. If you've tried, maybe you tried last year. I don't know if this is your first time. I don't know how many tries you've how many attempts you've made. But one thing I want to say to you is this, And I always use this person. I'm sure he's not online right now, because if he's on, he would have sent me a message. What's his name now? Oh gosh, I need to look at my Instagram to find his name. But anyway, I won't take time on that. One thing I want to say is that I've worked with a lot of people who didn't get through first time, right? And all we have to do, or all you have to do in this case, is where did you come short? And I hope that you're able to get some feedback, or at least have a sense of where you came short, and focus on improving that. Now, there are no guarantees that next time you try, you will get through. But the point here is where you have to optimize in the necessary areas. If you feel like it was the numerical reasoning, like the other person that shared their experience, that you came short, then find ways to improve on that. Some people, it was the PA exercise. Maybe they fumbled on, giving the right information, and they struggled to pass on the right information. So, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And the goal is not to become a perfect person or a perfect candidate, but the goal is to optimize when necessary. There's so many skills and competencies that have been tested in different phases of this exercise. And being in a position where you are able to learn from your mistakes and try again, and having that mindset to try again, is what can help you. Okay. So when they started this program again back in 2022, I believe 2023, right? When they started it again, there were some guys that didn't get through the first time, right? Some people got through, okay, because through my videos and all that, and even personal conversations and mentoring and coaching, right? Some got through, and some of those who didn't get through, that essentially made it to the final, tried again, and majority of them, I would say, maybe those who made it to the final stage in 2023, majority of them that tried again, that got to the final stage, all got selected. Okay. Now, some of them that tried again in 2024 from 2023, after they tried in 2023, that didn't make it in 2023, that tried again in 2024. Some people, for some reason, maybe lack of adequate preparation, I don't know what that may be, didn't get to the final stage. But all those who made it to the final stage got through. And the question that I often ask those people is, what made the difference? And all they always say is, one, they truly understood what is now required. A lot of people go into these things not knowing what is necessary, what is required. Yes, my videos will show you and explain some things to you and give you some of the tips and information that you should be aware of. But when you show up to the actual assessment, your ability to perform is now really on you, right? So not having that prior knowledge of what is expected can sometimes work against some people. But guess what? When they try again the next time, they now know what is expected. They now know how difficult or how well they need to prepare. And then they show up better prepared, and guess what? They get through. So what I'm just all that to say that I want to encourage you. I want you to know that, don't let this discourage you. You still have time on your hands, and you still have time on your side, just even with your age. All right. I stopped learning for a bit because I'm trying to prepare for an Air League interview. And best of luck to you on your interview, okay? I wish you success. Remember, think about your challenges. Think about how you deal with things, setbacks. Think about your motivation. Think about why you want to be a pilot. Think about the program itself, Air League. What difference have you? How do you plan to make a difference? If you're given the opportunity, there are tons of things I can mention, but I feel like I'll be going for too long, right? But the point here is, best of luck to you, and be confident. All right. Let's see. Thanks, Steven. Your advice is top tier. If I make it to the next stage, I will book a one-on-one session with you. All the best. Thanks, Bonat. I appreciate that. That's a great. It's great to know. Thank you. Sophanias, you're doing excellent. I do appreciate what you're doing. Keep going. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bokamoso 75. I'm 17, and I want to ask, if I go to the cheapest flight school, will I be at a disadvantage as in applying for an airline? That's a great question. Honestly, that's a great question. Now, going to the cheapest flight school will not put you at a disadvantage, just so you know. However, I need to say this. Sorry, I need to drink water real quick. Going to the cheapest flight school is not going to put you at a disadvantage at all. Okay. However, what you need to be very careful about and weary, okay, of is going to a school that may not be able to provide the education you need to succeed. Those two are different. Now, let me address your question to start with. Your question is, as a 17-year-old, if you go to the cheapest flight school, how would the airline view you? Understand that the airline generally, especially, I don't know where you're from, right? In the US and even in the UK, let me say this, right? Every airline, what they care about is, do you have the necessary certificate, the license, the experience, and can you pass the assessment? When you pass the assessment, you do an interview. Can you pass the interview? All right. Assuming you pass the interview, nobody really cares about the school you went to. Okay. Now, if you went to a school that, let's say, some school that is quite cheap, not structured, not well established, and you don't necessarily have to go to a well established school. Just so you know, I'm not saying this to push you in a direction in either way. Anyway, my goal is just to inform you, right? So I'm trying to inform you right now. Going to the cheapest flight school may work for you because sometimes you need that flexibility. Some of these established schools have a very rigid structure that doesn't give you ability to make money, to work on the side, or to go to school on the side, or to do something else, right? Whereas going to a cheap flight school, cheap quote unquote, I don't know what cheap means to you, but going to a cheap flight school, quote unquote, could give you the ability to schedule your training in a way that works with your lifestyle, whether you're working 2 jobs, 1 job, going to school on the side. Going to a school that lets you do that can sometimes come out cheap, right? And that may work for you. So going to an airline, to an interview, at the end of the day, as long as you are able to meet the necessary requirements and pass the assessment, then nobody really pays attention to the school you went to. On the other hand, if you go to an assessment or an interview and you do not perform well, or maybe you do an assessment and you do not perform well, or you do an exercise or a flight, because all assessments will put you through a simulator, right? And they put you in the sim and you can't perform. Guess what? They might go back to your training and say, oh, it's because you went to this X and X school, right? Because maybe the school is not well structured. They don't really care about the quality of education they are giving you. So all that to say, just because you went to a cheap flight school will not affect your ability to apply to any airline. That is the fact. However, the quality of education and the training that they instill in you can sometimes show up down the line as a deficiency. Okay. Now, does that mean that you could go to the most expensive school and still not be deficient in some things? Absolutely, right? And that's why I'm telling you that I'm not trying to dissuade you or discourage you from going to a cheap flight school. I'm just trying to give you the facts, all right? Based on my experience, based on the people that I've spoken to, based on the interviews that I've gone to, and just what I've seen in the aviation industry over 10 years already, right? So do what works for you. If you can afford the school that you found and it's considered cheap, go for it. But make sure you do the work that is required. Okay. I have my first class medical coming up. Any tips or recommended preparation? Honestly, you know, what is interesting is getting your medical in the US is it's not as, what is the word? I don't want to say rigorous because they still check the important things they need to check, right? But it's not often, there's nothing special for us anyway. I've never had to do my medical certificate or gotten my medical certificate in EU, UK region. So, but I know that a lot of people, I know that they do a lot of tests, and the best thing I can do is start exercising if you don't exercise on a regular basis, right? So make sure your heart rate is in a good, your heart blood pressure and all those things are in a good range. Maintain a healthy weight, right? And of course, hopefully there are no deficiencies or what do you call them now? Abnormalities in your, in your in you, right? If that makes sense. I hope you understand. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what term to use, but when it comes to just medical checkups, right? Those are things that they would generally check, including blood pressure. Sometimes they would do like an EKG to check your heart pulses and all that stuff. I'm not a medical person, so I don't know. So anyway, what I'm just trying to say is that whatever you do has to be something that you do on a regular basis. Whether you get your first class medical now or you're having to apply again 10 years from now, whatever you do is what you have to keep doing. So if it's eating right, exercising, getting enough sleep as much as you can, taking care of your body, right? Those are things that will save, that will protect you. And hopefully there are no medical conditions that will prevent you from getting your medical. All right. I went out at the Skyborn assessment. Man, sorry about that. I honestly, and it was your first attempt. Yeah. So now that you've done it, you kind of know what is expected. You know what is expected. You know how to maybe prepare better, right? And honestly, just try. I don't know how you prepared for it. But I always recommend PASS because that's what I've used in the past, and I know that they provide some decent information on there. But just keep trying. That's all I would say. So let's see, how to aim for internet airlines. I heard they don't hire pilots from other countries. Vedicalate, that is correct. Okay, so let me clarify this. I get this question a lot, so I'm going to address it again. You can't apply to an airline from a foreign country unless you have the certificate from the license from that country. You meet the job requirements. So for example, ability to live and work in a country. Those things are very important that you have in order for you to work there. So what I'll say is that, depending on your situation, can you relocate? Can you literally, I grew up in Nigeria, but I'm not in Nigeria right now. You know what I mean? So the point here is, can you relocate to another country and establish residency in that country? That's something you could do, all right? But if you think they would hire you as an international student or as a foreign employee, and that's not going to happen. So I would say that, put yourself in a better position by maybe relocating. That's something that's the only thing I can say about that. What are the most important attributes for a pilot to have? Oh, great. That's a great question. Okay. And this, like I said, I always say that this always sounds like an interview question, and I think you guys can see it. Let me move this out of the way. I'm going to move that up a little bit. This question here. Now, what are the most important attributes for a pilot to have? So, when it comes to becoming a pilot, there are so many attributes we can talk about. Is it having the people skills, right? Ability to interact with people and people that you work with, or is it the competencies? Like we can list all the 9 competencies that we talk about: communication, leadership, decision making. You have workload management, flight management skills. All of those competencies, right? They all are required. Okay. Now, there's no perfect person. Nobody's perfect. So the point I'm trying to make is that in the list of all those competencies, people skills, customer service skills, that you have professionalism in there as well. In those lists, your ability is that what you should strive for is to have somewhat level distribution of abilities in you, if that makes sense. So for example, being a professional, what does that mean? You have to be able to demonstrate that when you go in for an interview. Okay. Being able to make decisions, you have to be able to exercise that decision-making skill and show that you can make decisions, right? So in order to answer this question, those attributes, right, and I can again kind of relate it to competencies, are things that you're not expected to be perfect, but you have to be able to demonstrate those things. And you see, the ability to demonstrate them is where a lot of people come short. Okay. And just so you know, when you're taking assessments, it's a test of competency. Now, when you show up to an assessment, right? Let's take an assessment, for example. We've been talking about a few assessments so far. People might practice. You may practice well, but when you show up to the assessment, guess what? You're nervous. Your sweaty palms, your heart rate is going, beating fast, and now you can't concentrate, you can't focus, and then you don't do well on the assessment. Okay. Guess what? Those are things that they are testing for. That's why they put you under pressure, because if they truly wanted to make you relax, that's what they tell you. They tell you to relax. Oh, it's gonna be good. Just relax. We are here to get to know you. They try to make you relaxed, and that's what they should do. But part of the assessment is how you manage pressure. If that makes sense, how you manage, your workload, how you manage your stress. So if you show up to that assessment and you're stressed, even though you are competent and you could have done this in your own room and excel pretty well, guess what? One of the things they're testing for is how you manage your stress as well. Because when you show up to work, you will have to deal with stress on the job. And if you cannot put yourself to focus on what the task in front of you and excel, how would you perform when you show up to work? So anyway, all of what I'm trying to get to based on this question that you asked me, all right, is that, this question, what are the important attributes for a pilot to have? The list, we can list 10, 15 things right now, right? And they are all important. That's where I'm going. The problem, though, is a lot of you guys and girls do have these abilities, but how you manage them, for example, your stress, or how you demonstrate them, for example, your competencies, is where a lot of people come short. And of course, last but not least, and I think I have to say this one, is preparation. Right? If you're not adequately prepared for these things, you will not get through. That is as simple as that. If you're not knowledgeable about these competencies that we talk about, how to demonstrate them, it would impact your chances. So all I'm trying to say in summary is that all the competencies are important. Your people skills are important. Your communication skills are important. Your workload management skills are important. How you manage stress is important, right? How you make decisions, important. Are you a respectful person, right? You show up to an interview, but you disrespect everybody. Guess what? You don't get it. Even though you have excellent in all these other areas, right? But guess what? Your attitude is terrible, for example, right? I'm not referring to you in particular, but I'm just talking in general. You wouldn't get it. So you have to look into this in the sense, what are the important, the question you ask, or what are the most important attributes, means that they are just like maybe 5 things that are important. Honestly, no. All of those things are important. How you dress is important. If you come in scruffy and your hair is all over the place, your beard's all over the place, or if you're a lady, you're dressed in a provocative way or whatever, you won't get it. If this makes sense. I hope I'm communicating. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself, but I hope you can see that my goal is just to communicate to you that all these things are important, and there is no one thing or 5 important things that I will say that you need to have. Now, when it comes to describing your experiences and narrating your stories, there are some important things that I would point to you, right? And those would be the competencies that, hey, when you are thinking of your stories, when you're thinking of interviewing, when you think preparing your motivation and all that, you got to be able to demonstrate those competencies and highlight your strengths in those things. That is very important, but that's not the most important, if that makes sense. All right, SB, hi Steven. I managed to get a place on the scheme following your advice. My question is, how far away from the airport do you recommend living, and does this change long haul versus short haul? First of all, Congratulations. I know I've seen this name before, SB, but I can't remember, and I can't remember the conversations we've had. So sorry if I can't exactly, pinpoint, because again, I've had a lot of conversation with people, so it's hard for me to remember exactly what we said. But first of all, following my advice, thank you so much, and I'm glad that it helped and worked for you. Okay, that's one thing I'll say. But then the other thing is, how far should you leave from the airport? Leave as close as possible. Oh my goodness, because you see, I commute to work, and what I means is that I don't live in the base where my airline operates. So my base is couple of hundreds of miles away, right? So I can't drive it easily. It's going to take me about 8 hours or so to drive it. To fly it, it's about an hour, 30 minutes or so. So in planning for work, it's a little bit it requires some extra steps. You gotta go early, way earlier than planned, right? Because you gotta time the flight, so you have to catch, or if you're gonna drive, you gotta stay well in advance of that and plan. So all that to say that live as close as possible to the airport. But I also know that depending on where you live, you might not be able to live close to the airport because maybe it's so expensive to live in those areas, or you might not even find good housing in that area. So I understand that. But one thing I'll say is that, for a long haul, right? Let me address that. Long haul flying. If you are a commuter, sometimes it can work for you. Because with long haul flying, generally speaking, you're either starting very late or very early. Generally speaking, that's usually for most longer flights that exist. And starting very early means that you would go the night before. So you are able to maybe go the day before, get enough rest, and then show up to work in the morning, right? You're leaving at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., something like that. Depending on where you live, of course, right? On the other hand, if it's like a late flight, you can show up in the morning. So let's say I'm flying long haul flights tonight, right? I'm leaving from wherever I work, and I'm flying for a couple of hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, 14 hours, whatever. I can show up to work in the morning, get my rest, okay, and then show up to work later in the evening. So I commute. I hope that makes sense. I commute to work, get my rest. So you probably would need a place to stay. So for over here, we have what they call crash pads. And I'm not sure if you've heard about that term before, but crash pads are pretty much shared apartments where you share with other pilots. So it's like you might have your own room. Sometimes it's a shared room, I'll be honest with you. But it's a place where you go in, spend a few hours, and then you're out. Instead of using a hotel, right, you use a crash pad because it's way cheaper than booking a hotel. Because the airline, unless you are on duty, the airline is not going to cover your hotels. Now, some airlines may have slight different policies, but for my particular situation and most airlines, once you're not on duty, they're not covering your hotels, they're not covering your accommodations, right? So you have to plan for that. So you show up anyway. Long story short, you show up to your crash pad, your hotel, if you want to pay for it, depending on what your situation is, spend rest, and then you show up to work, and then of course you go on your longer flight. For short offline, it can be a bit different. It can be a little bit difficult. If you're starting early, of course, for a short haul flight, that means you have to go the night before. If you're starting late, of course, you can show up the day in the morning as well. That's fine. But sometimes short haul can sometimes start in the afternoon. It can start mid-morning, like midday, depending on when your schedule starts, right? So it can make it hard to time, especially if you don't have a lot of options to get to work. So what I would tell you is that wherever you live, if you're going to have to fly to your base to start working, hopefully it's a base that has multiple options of flights to take you to your base. I hope this makes sense, right? On the other hand, if you're going to drive to work, I hope that it is close enough that it's not stressful, because remember, when you finish work, you still have to drive back. So if it's too far and you've just finished, a 10-hour flight and you have to then drive another 2 hours, man, that will be exhausting, right? So something to keep in mind. For my interview prep, I have notes for my motivations, where my interest in aviation began, 5 pilot competencies, curveball questions, info about Air League, and my weaknesses. Great. Now, I'm curious why you have 5 pilot competencies, and I'm guessing that's because there are some that you can't prepare for. I know that the Flight management, automation, flight management, manual, those are the ones you probably can't do anything for those ones. But I believe for every other competency that exists, you can actually have some stories that goes in line with to demonstrate those competencies. So what I'm just going to say is 5 parallel competencies, sure, but I'm sure you can actually do up to 7 competencies if you really look into it and you think about your experiences. There's some things you can prepare for, but always remember that some of the questions they can also ask you is how you manage challenges and all that. And one thing I always tell people is, if you are struggling with a question, go with an example. All right, so if they ask you a question, you're like, man, I don't know exactly how to describe this, but you know what, do you mind if it's a question that is not clear? Of course, you can always ask them, do you mind asking in another way? You can ask them if it's not clear to you. But if it's a question that requires you to explain something, right, and you don't remember the technical terms or whatever that is required to describe that situation or the experience, then what I'll tell you is that use an example. Even if you have to make it on the fly, if that makes sense, you have to come up with the example on the fly. You have to be able to think on your feet. All right, when you show up to an interview. So that's something that would help you anyway. Fino, absolutely. I'll prepare better for the next year. Keep flying and learning from my errors, mistake, and even my failure. I prepared myself using the material that BA provided me. Yeah. So that is something that, don't get me wrong, and I think I've shared this, Fino. All right. In as much as they give you some information, I'll be honest with you, it's not sufficient. And that is something that I would say to you, that you have to be willing to explore other areas as well. Now, I know some of those other areas require you to pay, and that's the truth about it. I can't tell you how much I've spent in preparing for interviews, how much I've spent in preparing for assessment, all this stuff. You gotta. There's a price for it, and yes, they may tell you that you don't have to pay for all these things, but guess what, they are not the ones applying for the opportunity, right? And I'm not encouraging you to, okay, I'm just telling you the facts, okay? I'm not telling you that you have to go pay for anything, but if you truly want it, you do what it takes. If you don't truly want it, you probably won't want to do it, right? So whatever gives you an edge, you take advantage of it. That's all I can tell you. Whatever gives you, even if it makes you 1% better, right, it's worth it. Why? Because all it takes is sometimes 1 point off, right? 1 score off or 1 answer off in your interviews, and then you're out. So whatever would help you, give you that added, because remember, I always tell people this, right? And maybe you guys might be hearing this for the first time. What will be your return on investment if you spend, I don't want to, X amount of money, it doesn't matter how much you spent, right? X amount of money, and you got into like a speedbird program. Your return on investment is like, it's more than 100%. If you get what I mean, like, is it 10,000%, right? Because the cost of training alone is going to outweigh whatever you spent. Not to now talk of the fact that you didn't get a job. Not to not talk of the fact that you get benefits that comes with it. So when you think about your return on investment on things that, it may cost you money now, but if it gives you a lot of valuable information that then increases your chances of securing that opportunity, then guess what? You are better off. All right. Now, nobody's going to promise you that, if you do this, then you get that. No. But the point here is, every opportunity that prepares you for an interview is something that would always stick with you. The knowledge you gain, the information you gain, the skills you gain are things that will help you even outside of aviation. You see, there's some things that I've paid for while preparing for interviews in the past, or while preparing for assessments in the past, that in as much as I may feel like, maybe I didn't get anything. When you look back to what you've learned, you realize that it was worth what you paid for, because it improved other areas of your life, whether it's communicating, whether it's confidence, whether it's answering questions on the fly. Like, literally all of these things I've been talking about are things that it comes from experience and practice, but it's also because of the knowledge that I've acquired over time. And some of that knowledge requires me to pay for them. That is the truth about it, right? I didn't come out, knowing how to fly. I didn't come out knowing about how to prepare for an interview. I didn't come out knowing how to, these are things that I learned. And how did I learn them? Well, resources. And some resources, you got to pay for it. It's as simple as that. All right, let's see. You think I need to cover anything else? Yeah, like I said, I think I already mentioned it. You said 5 pilot competencies. I mean, I know there are 9. I know 2 you can prepare for. So you definitely can do up to 7 when it comes to pilot competencies. Now, the other thing to remember is that sometimes they only ask you like 4 questions, right? Because the interview only lasts 30 minutes. So preparing for everything may not be necessary, right? Because you may not use all those information that you prepare for, but you just don't know in what area and what type of question. You don't know how the question is going to come right at you. So the point is that you are doing the right things, right? And but you remember using STAR acronym. Make sure you're able to tie those competencies into your stories, and hopefully you can think on the fly. So always have two stories for each competency, and it doesn't have to be long stories, right? But the point is that something that highlights and demonstrates that you have the ability to make decisions under pressure, or you have the ability to work with team members, or you're able to face challenges and handle them well. The list goes on, right? So and sometimes one story can apply to different competency, right? So it doesn't have to be unique stories for each one. But something to also remember is that sometimes you may use a story for your decision making, and the same story can still apply to your customer service. But because you've mentioned that story, or you've discussed it already, or the experience, then you can't use it for something else. So you have to plan for that. You have to always have backup stories, if that makes sense. All right, let's see. Once again, thank you very much, Steven, and I will keep following the channel and the advice. You're welcome, Fino, and I wish you success. Remember, that is the key thing. And when you finally achieve that success, please share it with me. It goes a long way. Let's see. Do you think having more hours of flying experience can increase the chances for international? So yes, having more experience will help you, right? Flying for an international airline, absolutely. That is a yes. Okay, as long as you meet the requirements to work for that airline. Also, having ATPL in hand, can we start applying for international? No, not necessarily. Just because you have an ATPL doesn't mean that you can start applying for an airline. Remember, like I said, most of these airlines require that you have maybe ability to work in that airline. Now, if the airline is going to sponsor your immigration documents, right, your work permit and all that, then sure. But absolutely, once you have an ATPL, you can start applying. Okay. But make sure that you meet the requirements. Remember, at the end of the day, every airline will list its requirements to work for them. And if you do not meet those requirements, let me put it this way. There are often requirements that you need to meet. For example, you need to be able to work. A good one is a requirement to live and work in a certain place. It's always a big one. If you don't meet that requirement, your application won't even go further. Right now, if the airline will sponsor your application to be able to work and live in that country, then that's definitely, there's an exemption to that, right? But in this particular example, let's assume that it's a requirement that you need to have, then there's no point applying because you do not meet the requirement. Now, if they will sponsor you, of course, you can apply. Okay. So having an ATPL, absolutely start applying if you meet all the requirements. Now, that may not get you an interview, or that may not get you called just yet, but when they see a track record of your application and you constantly update it, which as you get more experience, as you gain more qualifications, and you update that information, it can help you. Think about it as it's like knocking on the door, right? When you submit your application, that's a knock on the door. And if nobody answers you, well, you go back and try again, right? But when you try again, you're trying with new information. So maybe you have more hours. Maybe you have a newer type rating. Maybe you have more education. Maybe you have more experience, right? And then you come back again and you keep updating that information. So every time you update it, there's always a chance for them to take a look at you and say, okay, well, how was this person perform? Oh, he or she has been applying since for 2 years. I can see that they've made improvements, they've updated their information, now they've made the requirements, and now they call you for an interview. So the point here is, yes, you can start applying at that point. Anyway, hi Stephen, would you recommend going for a degree and applying for Speedbird, or doing this apprenticeship with BA and then applying for Speedbird? So I've realized, Football Edit, I've met people that were flight attendants with British Airways. Apparently, from what I've heard, there's no advantage to it. It's good, don't get me wrong, right? So it's not a bad thing, but it doesn't give you any added advantage. Good in the sense that it opens you up it shows that you know the airline. It shows that you are probably motivated to work for the airline, right? But it doesn't give you any advantage in the assessment itself, because you'll be assessed the same way. You will take the same assessment. Maybe when you show up to an interview, maybe you have good stories to tell because you've been in the industry and you've done some, I know that you said it's be apprenticeship, right? But what I'm just trying to tell you is that if you can get into those things, absolutely. There's so many of them, Speedbird Z and all the other programs that they offer. Please take advantage of them, because those things are good on your resume, right? On your CV. But does it give you any advantage in the assessment itself? No. Does it give you any advantage during the interviews? Not necessarily, unless you use those experience from those opportunities, whether it's how you handle the challenge on the job, right? Maybe it gives you the opportunity to experience those type of challenges that you can use during an interview. But like I said, it doesn't give you any preferential treatment if you get what I mean. Like, because you are part of BA, or because no, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Matthew Ward, hi Steven, I'm going through the next stage of BA. Do you have any tips for the group assessment or how to prepare for the ego capacity test? Thank you for Matthew, I hope you're doing well. So congratulations getting to this stage again. I know a lot of you guys have gotten to, girls and guys, by the way, have gotten to this stage, and I know some didn't get through, don't get me wrong, but what I'm trying to say is that congratulations, it's a huge milestone. And the only advice I will tell you is, when it comes to any group assessment, please watch the video that I've made. I made that video, maybe I can't remember the exact date now, recently anyway, and I talked about some group assessment tips and things like that. But when it comes to any group exercise, one of the things that you can always keep in mind is that you are being observed to see how you function within a group, right? So if you are the type of person who doesn't like to talk, or too quiet, or shy, or intimidated by other people's egos, then that's not you're likely going to be in a position where you're not shining, right? The goal is to shine in this exercise. Now, shine as a group. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Sorry, I hope I wasn't too loud in your ears. Shine as a group, right? So you are not taking advantage of the fact that somebody else is quiet. In fact, when somebody else is quiet in the group, you want to put the light on them and help them, speak or share their thoughts or share their input. So the point here is, in any group exercise you find yourself, the goal is to work together as a team, right? And your ability to work with those people is what they're testing for. Now, in addition to working as a team, they want to see how you communicate, they want to see how you lead or how you partake in the leadership role, right? Everybody has to show that strength in that exercise. So if you guys would work together and give each other enough opportunity to contribute and share their thoughts, and maybe even give instructions or guidance on what to do, that would be great. Okay. Now, one of the areas that a lot of people struggle with is when it comes to this type of group exercise. You may find yourself in a group where maybe there are two, for example, it's a group of 3 people, right? And you have 2 people that are very dominant and they're talking and they're not giving the opportunity to talk. You have to learn how to, again, take back control. Not necessarily aggressively, but take back control in the sense that, hey, I'm here and have something to say as well. And the only way you would do that politely is maybe ask questions, give your own contribution, give instructions, and make sure it is related to the assessment at hand. So stick with the facts. I always say that every time. Stick with the facts, and remember that your opinion sometimes can actually put you in a situation where a lot of people would have a lot of knowledge or experience from outside, and that sometimes bites or takes more of the exercise time, because that, oh yeah, in my job I do X, Y, and Z. Nobody really cares what you do for your job during the group exercise. Let's focus on the task at hand. How do we meet the objective of the exercise? Whether it's planning something, whether it's completing a task, that is really the key thing. And what they want to hear is, whatever you're saying, make sure it's either contributing to the exercise, giving instructions on how to execute it, or maybe getting opinions and input from others as well while executing on what needs to be done. And of course, don't forget T-DOTA, right? I always say that every time. Stick to the time. Don't forget that. Okay. All right. SB, amazing. Thanks, Stephen. Glad you're doing well. Thank you very much. All right. Let's see. Hi, Stephen. I appreciate you doing. Let's see. Luro. Hi, Stephen. I appreciate the help you're giving out. I'm preparing for an Air League interview coming up, but I've never got an opportunity like this. What do you suggest I look for or plan for? Actually, somebody just shared something like that they're also preparing for this Air League interview as well. And I think I just covered it. I just covered all the things that you should prepare for. Well, I didn't say all the things you prepare for. Recommendations, all right, these are all recommendations. Generally speaking, the interview will last 30 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, it depends. But one thing is that, motivation is always big when it comes to these programs. They always want to see how motivated you are. Now, what got you interested in flying? What got you interested in applying to the program, right, to the Air League program itself? How do you plan to contribute and put it forward to help other people, right, in the future, assuming you are awarded the scholarship? And of course, you also should think about challenges. How have you dealt with challenges in the past? How would you think a pilot would deal with a challenge? They might give you a scenario, and they will ask you, like, how would a pilot handle that type of situation? Now, I don't know exactly what you would get, but one thing I would say is that your knowledge of the industry or your knowledge about aviation would help you. And of course, your own motivation and your own experiences would help you. So I always say to review the STAR concept and model. I think I've covered that. I've covered that all through this session that we've been chatting. Sorry, you guys can't see that. So one of the things that really impacts a lot of people is the ability to communicate this information, right? If you're unable to articulate what you want to say during that assessment or interview, that's generally what hurts a lot of people. So, and one thing, and I know this may sound crazy, one thing that I will tell you is practice, okay? Your motivation, right? Why are you interested in, why do you want to be a pilot, right? Make sure that you have some form of key points in your mind on what you would like to highlight. But while you're doing that, all right, make sure whatever you say, you highlight your strengths in the process, whether it's providing good customer experience or good customer service, or whether it's the ability to manage workload and manage multiple tasks, right? Those things can sometimes help you demonstrate that you have the skills, and of course, you know what you're getting into. And again, pilot competencies, I always say that every time, right? Read about those, know about them, and be able to apply them to whatever scenario you're given or question you're asked. They might ask you some questions that are not direct. So for example, they ask you a question about, I can't think of a particular one at the top of my head right now, but they might ask you a question where they put you in a situation, in an environment or in a scenario where you may not know exactly what competency they're testing for. And if you can think, if you can think critically, you probably will figure it out, right? Because there's always clues in all the questions. So a question that requires you working with your team members, that's a clue that, hey, they're probably testing for my ability to work with groups or within a team. A question that maybe is in line of meeting somebody or working with a customer or somebody that you may not know from anywhere means that maybe how they're testing for how you are able to handle, how you provide, how you consider providing excellent customer service in a situation like that. Sometimes it might be a question in which is testing for your ability to apply decision making, right? And they may not ask you what would you do, right? But based on what they say, you have to deduct from that information that, hey, okay, I need to make a decision. And when you are giving the answers, it would help you by mentioning the competencies by the name itself. So for example, you ask a question and you're not sure exactly what competencies is testing for. Sometimes it's best to critically think of the steps. So break it down. So, and honestly, I wish I had a good question in front of me right now, but I don't. But one thing I'll say is that give yourself enough opportunities to nail the competency by highlighting in each question what are the probable competencies that could apply. So if it's decision making, if it's workload management, if it's leadership, if it's communication, right? So in that particular scenario, I may not know exactly what is required, but one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start listing how is communication in my mind, how is communication applicable in this particular question. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to make sure, and then you answer, all right? The next thing is in my mind, I'm thinking, what is the next probable thing, right? Of course, from the most important to the least, right? You kind of have to organize it that way. But what you don't want to do is to mention one thing or two things and then just give up on it, because that way it may show that you're not thinking critically, okay? So something to, I hope that's not a long answer. I think that's probably too long, but but I hope that makes sense. Okay, but best of luck to you, okay? Let's see, I'm going to okay, well, I'm doing an interview at least. Okay, how did you cut out bad habits to be more focused during ground? You got to do what you have to do. When it comes to bad habits, I don't know what you would consider bad habits, but one thing I'll say is that getting on a schedule, right? Writing down your tasks. So if you prioritize, okay, today I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y, you write down a to-do list, for example, or putting yourself on a schedule, on a calendar, that may help. I do calendar sometimes, but not every time. Sometimes it's just about a task. And actually, I would recommend this one, right? Let me show you something, right? The reason is because when you don't have it on your schedule and you're busy doing more important things, let me find the app again. Actually, it's To Do by Microsoft, all right? If you go on Google and just search To Do by Microsoft, it's a great app that I use for, it's a great app that so it has like these check boxes and, bullet points and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. I mean, you can use any app for it. It doesn't have to be that one, but I just like that particular one because I actually use it for work as well, just so you know. So the point here is, just get disciplined. That's the best way I can put it. You gotta, especially during training, you have to be focused. Yeah, you take breaks sometimes. You enjoy, your time training. You hang out with friends sometimes, but stay out of trouble. And hi Tom, hope you're doing well. How is well, have you started training? I'm not if you're still on, by the way. Have you started training at all? I'm curious. Matthew, Tom, thank you so much for all the help and advice. Even I'll watch your group assessment video again and let you know if my progress further after the assessment day. Best of luck to you, okay? I remember let me see, I'm going back here. Yeah. It is very important. Please be confident, all right? When you show up to your assessments, be confident in yourself, speak up, let them hear you, right? And of course, be professional, all right? That is key. So in your dressing, in the way you speak, in the way you carry yourself, and try to build a good rapport with the people you meet on that day. Don't be extremely friendly where you then lose focus of what is important, but build a rapport, because when you get to build a rapport with people that you're interviewing with, guess what? Those are the people you're likely to meet during your group assessment, because when they pair you up, these are people that you may end up being in the same group with. And when you already have a rapport, when maybe you know their name, or you kind of, just share two chit-chats between the two of you or three of you or whatever, you may show up to that interview or that group assessment and it might be the most fun thing you've ever done, because hey, you guys are just having fun. You're just trying to work together to solve a problem, and nobody feels like the other person is being left behind, or the third person is being left behind. So the point here is, best of luck to you anyway. Fly with Gio. I'm going to apply to Airways Pilot Academy in the summer as a fresh high school graduate. I have tons of motivation inside me, and I'm willing to do everything to accomplish this dream of mine. But best of luck to you, Flight with Gio. I like that name actually, Flight with Gio. All right, that's best of luck to you, and I wish you success. Okay, Justin Morris started PPL 141 back in October, flying 1 or 2 times a week in a full-time career until May 2027. Currently struggling with maneuvers before taking my stage 1 checks. Any recommendations? Hey, Justin Morris. First of all, I want to say that if you're still on, how many hours do you have right now? If you don't mind, just dropping in the chat. I'm curious to know, because one thing I will say is that just like anything that you're doing, right, flying 1 to 2 times a week can be, it's at a slow pace. I know that is what works for you, just so you know, and I'm not coming at this is coming from a place of encouragement, all right, because I know that you're working full time and there's a lot going on, so I definitely appreciate that. You have 35 hours, all right. So one thing I'll say is that flying 1 to 2 times is definitely on the slow pace of things in a week, because if you think about it, in a month, you're only doing about 8 flights, right? And that can be very, very slow. Sometimes when it comes to aviation, okay, now 1 to 2 times isn't bad. Okay, I see. You say I'll be more full time this summer because I work on college camp. Okay, cool. So that would definitely help you. That would help you. But here's something I want to encourage you to do. Do you use Microsoft Flight Sim? By the way, I'm on this question. Do you use Microsoft Flight Sim? I don't know if you use that, and do you actually spend time? Not because you use it once in a while. All right. You might not use the program on a regular basis, like every day. I'm not saying that, but that might help you fill in the gaps. So if you, let's say, flew on Monday and now you're flying again on Friday, that's a very long time not flying. All right. Okay, cool. So you're doing the right things. What I think might be from the little things that you've shared about yourself. Of course, I know you haven't shared a lot, but from the little things you've shared, one thing I would say is that you may have a lot of gaps in between flying. Okay, cool. To get with the good muscle memory, absolutely. So you're doing the right things. Okay, absolutely. I see that you're doing the right thing. So one thing I'll say is you want to fill in the gaps with practice on your own. So chair flying. Okay. Now, the other thing also is this, right? I hope by this stage you don't have any what we call flight what's the word? Any I've forgotten the word I'm trying to look for. When you first started flying, right? Initially, your mind is so focused on just the flying aspect that you forget to actually learn. and this happens to a lot of people when they first start out. But by 35 hours, I think you should have definitely gotten past that stage of now you can actually learn and think as you are flying and practicing these maneuvers. Because what happened to most people is, or what could be happening also is, you might be good with the maneuvers while you're sitting in your room practicing these maneuvers, or throttles to 1,700 RPM and speed down to whatever speed you're flying on, and then the flaps and all these maneuvers, right? You might be good with those things, the rote aspect, while you are sitting. But when you get in the air, it might be hard for some people. I'm not saying you, but in your case, it could be, I don't know. But some people find it hard to be able to apply those things in the real flying itself. Why? Because now you have gusts, you have the noise, you have distractions, you have your instructor talking to you, you have all these things. So one thing I always encourage you to do is, or what I would encourage you to do is, practice more chair flying. Try to find a way to, if you can, and I know you said by summer you're going to fly more, increase the frequency of the flights itself. In a 7-day period, right, at least 3 is a good pace, decent pace, at least 3. But 1 to 2 is slow, and here's why 1 to 2 is slow. The reason why 1 to 2 is so slow is because, remember, let's say you flew on Monday and then you don't fly again until Friday. You already have that gap, one. But then two, let's assume that your flight on Friday doesn't happen because of weather, because you got sick or something like that, right? Now you don't show up again until only God knows, maybe next week Tuesday. And now you're already having a gap of more than a week, So the point here is that increase the frequency. That would help. Do more chair flying, do more practice on your own. In the comfort of your home, of course, but of course, try to imagine, all right? And that's why visualization goes a long way when it comes to flying. Sometimes you close your eyes and start putting yourself in that environment, like you're in the air, and now you're doing this, you're doing that, you're dealing with the bombs, you're dealing with the ATC. You just kind of it's sometimes flying can be, especially when it comes during training, can be a bit of imagination and in visualization, right? Your strength and your ability to do those things can sometimes help you a lot when you show up to the flying, all right? Absolutely. Awesome. Glad to hear that. And honestly, I wish you success. Where are you? I'm curious. What part of the States are you? Let's see. All right. I think I've spent, let's see, how many hours have I spent? Almost 3 hours. Jesus is Lord. But it's been fun though. I've definitely enjoyed this. That's why I've spent this long. But I need to go and get lunch. It's 2 p.m. my time, wherever you are. I know it's probably late for those of you in the UK. Chicago. Nice. That's the Chi town, right? I think that's how it's said. But yeah, glad to connect with you all. Honestly, I love connecting with you. I know that I don't do this often and I think I should do it more, but when it takes time. You can see we spent 3 hours today and it's been great. I hope that you guys continue to pursue your dreams and your goals, and I wish you success in all that you do. It's important, remember, to stay safe at all times. Prioritize safety. Okay, if you're applying to career programs, stay motivated, all right, because it can be challenging to get through some of this, but I want you to know that it is achievable. I'll be honest with you, when I started, I didn't know that I would do it. Why? Because I didn't have the funds. That's one. Two, I didn't have anybody in my family that has done anything like this. So being here, I humbly tell you that it is possible. That's the truth about it. And I hope to continue to provide valuable information to you all to the best of my abilities. Of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, please feel free to subscribe. If you haven't dropped a like on the video, please drop a like on the video. It goes a long way. If you have any questions, please, you can always reach me on Instagram. I'll try to respond. But like I said, sometimes I get tons of messages. It's hard to keep up. Same thing with comments on the videos. I appreciate them. Please leave the comments, even if it's just hi. I appreciate it. Just know that I work, and sometimes I'm working late. I work at night. I fly for a cargo industry, so in the cargo industry anyway. So working at night, you're sleeping during the day. It can take a lot of time, and when I'm in the hotel, even though I might release a video because I scheduled it in advance and it released while I'm working, it means that I can't respond to it. So please, if you see my videos, leave a comment. Just say hi. Just thank you, whatever, right? Just say, hi, Steven, how are you doing? I'm going to respond at some point. I might not respond that day. And that's because, like, somebody asked me, how do you manage, somebody said, how do you manage distractions and bad habits, right? Honestly, you just have to get on a strict schedule and be very disciplined, because this industry will push you to do that. Honestly, if you really want to succeed, to push you to get on a schedule, to be structured, to manage your time, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to come. See, when you go to work, and it's the good thing about aviation, and also the bad thing if you don't manage it well. When you show up to work, nobody's on top of you like, oh, did you show up on time? Oh, did you dress well? Oh, did you prepare for this flight? Nobody's going to ask you those questions. You got to show up prepared every single day and you show up to work. So if you don't rest well, nobody's going to come at you and say, oh, you didn't rest well, blah, blah, blah. Why didn't you rest well? Nobody's going to do that. It's not like a typical job where you clock in and clock out, and if you don't clock in on time, they'll see that, oh, it doesn't work that way. But guess what? If you don't show up to work and your flight is delayed, and you delay 300 people from getting to your destination on time, guess who is on the cross for it? You are going to be on the cross for it. And that's where it also applies to, if you don't rest well, if you don't eat, if you don't exercise, who's gonna show up to their medical and struggle. It's going to be you. Why? Because you haven't taken care of your body, you know. So the point here is a lot of things are going on in the background that a lot of people don't see. And sometimes when you put a lot of effort into these videos and it gets 10 views and you're like, really? But I also know that a lot of you have found value in all these videos. So I appreciate it. And I you know, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all the likes and the comments. And most importantly, what motivates me to keep doing this is the fact that when I needed this help, there was nobody. There was no video on YouTube. There was no person I could reach out to that would respond. Now, I know that I haven't responded to everybody too, but if you have joined this live, I know I've answered every single person that has left a question, that has asked a question, that has said hi. I've responded to you. So if I need to do this more, like somebody said, Strider, I know you said I should do this more. I will try to do that. All right. I will try to do that when the time permits. I have all the time. Well, not all the time, but I have time today, and that's why I showed up. I slept well, have the time. I didn't have something else planned, and that's why I could spend 3 hours, and it's been great, honestly. So if you've stayed to this point, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm just going to answer these questions real quick before I end the live. All right, thanks for the vids. Went to what I said yesterday. Your videos are really useful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And honestly, Isaac, I wish you success. The prayer is that you've demonstrated those things that you're looking for. Remember, it's all about ticking the boxes. I always say that every time. There's something they are looking for. You need to be able to demonstrate those things, whether it's in your assessment, whether it's in your interview. You are not... Think about it this way. There's no reason why you can't get this opportunity or you can't get into this program. And the reason why I say that is because you've met the requirements to apply. You've done the necessary things to get to this stage. The rest is really making sure that you tick the necessary boxes along the way. And I know that it's easy for me to say that, but I also want you to know that that is how it is. If you pass the test, you move to the next stage. All you have to do is pass that test. If you show up to that interview, show up and be prepared, and make sure that whatever you have been asked, you're able to, you know, answer it to the best of your abilities. And where my videos come in is to fill in the gaps. And what gaps am I talking about? You all, no matter where you are in the world, all have the competencies. Most of you are very good at maths. I'm not excellent at math. I'll be honest with you. I'm not like, oh, a genius that knows. No, I'm not. Right? And what I'm trying to get you to understand is that you don't have to be perfect for you to achieve this goal. And sometimes you see pilots, they dress up, they wear their tie, they wear their jackets, and it seems like, oh, these are perfect people and they don't make mistakes. Hell no. They make mistakes too. They forget things too. They skip procedures too sometimes, right? Not intentionally, but the point is we are human. Humans will make mistakes. So I don't want you to think that, oh, there's this perfect body that needs to... No, it's easy for people to have that perspective because, well, it's a very niche industry. But what you have to do is that learn as much as you can. And that's the gap that I'm trying to fill. The information, the knowledge, and how to present that information, because you may know a lot of things, but if you don't know how to present that information in an interview, if you don't know how to present that information during an exercise or a group exercise, then you may not get the right things that you know, tick the right boxes. So I hope all of this has made sense, and hopefully it continues to make sense to you. All right. Thanks so much for your help. Could you specify what you and the Air League mean by industry knowledge and what it looks like in an interview? Well, so industry knowledge, for example, may mean like how does a pilot prepare for a flight, right? That's industry knowledge. Industry knowledge could be what are the challenges facing the aviation industry right now. Industry knowledge could be what are the roles of a captain, right, on a flight, or what are the duties of a pilot on a flight. Industry knowledge could be who are those people that are necessary on a flight, right? Now, these are not technical knowledge, just so you know. Technical knowledge would refer to like, how does an airplane fly? How does an engine work? Those questions. But industry knowledge just refers to like, what are the current developments in the aviation industry? What are the struggles or the challenges facing the aviation industry at this time? And what would you, what do you think? And somebody actually asked that question earlier, right? yeah, that's more of industry knowledge right there. And of course, maybe tied to the the interview you're preparing for. If it's like an airline, right? Know more about the airline. If it's a scholarship program, know about the scholarship program. Know about how you can how it will benefit you, how it changes people's lives, things like that, right? So I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much. Thank you, MKH. You've stayed for a while. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The decimal points, top of decent calculations for a good test, trip me up. Yep, that is actually, Isaac, I discussed that earlier before you joined. I'm pretty sure you probably weren't part of it earlier. But yeah, I know that's what a lot of people, it trips a lot of people up because of the decimal points. Like, would in real flying, it doesn't work that way. A lot of when it comes to flying in actual airplanes, right, when you're flying, a lot of approximations do occur, right? And I hope, I don't know, I hope that they consider this in this assessment, that you don't necessarily have to be I honestly, I don't know for its fact, okay, but my hope is that there's some form of approximation in this process, because when nobody's a calculator, you can't get exact division and get it right and know exactly where you need to descend and nail it down, unless they are even numbers or odd numbers, right? It can be easy to work with those kind of numbers. But when you have the in-betweens, like 14,750 or 14,322, and then you have to work your descent rates to 10,520 or something like that, it gets oh my gosh, like, what do I think about now? If you are flying, you can approximate a lot of things. Okay, 10,350, I can just approximate 10,400, and you get what I'm trying to say. Round up the numbers, work with the numbers, and then do the calculations from there. It might be easier to do that in actual flying, but I don't know if they do that in the assessment. I honestly don't know. So anyway, it's been great. I would love to see you guys in my next video. If you see it, please don't forget to click on it. Don't forget to like it. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell. It goes a long way so that you are notified when I release my next video. And I would see you next time. Have a great weekend and take care.